Well, good afternoon, Council, and those joining us this afternoon. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Monday, December the 8th, 2025. I'd like to start with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinootan people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. Our moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. On December 6th, this past weekend, we also remembered the 14 women whose lives were taken at École Polytechnique in Montreal. And we honor all those that have been lost to gender-based violence. This day is a reminder of the ongoing impacts of gender-based violence in our communities. Women, girls, two-spirit, gender-diverse communities. And people who continue to face disproportionate risks simply because of their gender. In Waterloo, we reaffirm our commitment to ending gender-based violence in all its forms and to work toward a community where everyone can live safely and in dignity. And I'm just looking up the names of the women who were killed on December 6th. Because I think it's important to say their name. And there are many, many women whose names we don't know, but I feel it's important to say those that we do. Genevieve Bergeron, Natalie Croteau, Anne-Marie Edward, Maurice Longnier, Anne-Marie Lemay, Michelle Richard, Annie Turcotte, Hélène Gaulgan, Barbara Deneau, Maude Havernick, Maurice Leclerc, Sonia Pelletier, Anne Saint-Laurent, Saint-Arnaud, and Barbara Kluznik-Wozniak. And I'm sorry if I said some or any of those names incorrectly. The CFUW ran a beautiful remembrance on Saturday, and one of the keynote speakers was an Indigenous elder who I thought just did a really amazing job to talk about her life, the violence that she lived through, and her hope for a future where her daughters will not face similar violence. Disclosure of a pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof, Council. Seeing none, I have points set as end screens in my way. So if I don't see you, please wave your hand about. It's not because I'm trying to miss you. There's consent items here, items A through D. Did anyone want to pull anything from consent? Seeing none, is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? Mayor, in favor of consent? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. We're moving on to staff reports. Staff report 6A, Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive construction pumping reconstruction pumping station funding release. It's prepared by Francis and Brad. Is there any questions on this report? Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That is carried. Yeah, carried unanimously. Thank you. We're on to item 6B, Parkview Crematorium lease agreement, and there's just some introductory remarks that are be provided by Mr. Milne Robin, did you want to approach the podium or the table, whichever you prefer?
Good afternoon, Chair and members of Council. Pleased to provide report Community Services 2025-33, and this is in regard to the Parkview Crematorium lease agreement. The report is before you. The recommendations are before you as well. Staff are here to answer any questions. Essentially, what this is looking at is the City of Waterloo exiting the cremation business and looking at the sale of retort equipment and then the lease of the crematorium operation at Parkview. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. So the building lease is a 10-year agreement. What conditions are around the sale of the retort? Does that happen over the 10-year lease period, or does it happen in an upfront transaction?
Through Chair Freeman and Councillor Wright, it is in essence a lease to own of the retort equipment. So it'll be paid with 50% installment of fair market value, and then payments over a 5-year duration. And the lease agreement will retain the right, a mutual right to extend for mutual durations of other 10-year increments. But if we were to not continue after the initial 10-year lease, the city does retain the right to buy back the retort at the fair market value at that point in time. So I think financially, we're very well protected on that asset and the disposition of it.
And just to follow up on that too, the retort has been listed as one of our GHG contributors. And so I'm just curious whether that comes off of our GHG inventory after that 5-year period, or because it's related to a city facility, whether it stays on. If you could just clarify that.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Wright, we don't have the answer on that yet, so we'll be working with FDMS on figuring out what that looks like. I do believe, though, that the GHG emissions will move with the retort. They won't remain with the city.
Councillor Rowe?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. I'm just wondering if you can advise if the city has any responsibility towards service quality, et cetera, once it transfers over to the corporation.
So the bereavement industry obviously is a very heavily regulated industry. So service quality and compliance will be conducted by the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. So we will be at hands off in terms of that regard. It would be done through the Bereavement Authority of Ontario.
Great, thank you.
I had a couple of questions. Can you confirm that individuals who have prepaid for services, how they will be cared for?
Certainly, through the lease agreement, Southwest has agreed to take on our prepaids, so that service will still be honored at Parkview Crematorium. We'll be sending out correspondence to individuals and families that have prepaid with us and facilitating that information over the coming month. Now, obviously, with a little bit of a shutdown at Christmas, that will probably leak into the new year as well. But we will communicate those arrangements with all the right holders.
With regard, I know that Councillor Wright asked about greenhouse gas reductions. I'm going to ask about the reduction of the whole service within our asset management plan. So I gather that the retort and all of the O&M associated with that will come out of our asset management plan?
To you, Chair Freeman, that is correct. For future iterations of the report card, this asset, once transferred over to Southwest, if approved today, would be removed from the asset management plan. So similarly, a best example is when we transferred ownership of the park aid to the region, it was removed at the next update.
Thank you. And then the last piece is that the environmental compliance approval for air emissions from the retort is in the name of the city. So, and there's also obligations in that associated with continuous emissions monitoring and a bunch of other things, stack testing, all of which are very expensive. Can you confirm that all of the legal paperwork will be filed with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, so the city no longer holds any liability associated with that operation?
Yes, we can confirm that.
Thank you. And technically, that's supposed to be done before they take operation and ownership, but I'll leave that with you to have that conversation with the ministry. That was all of my questions, Council. Seeing none other, is there someone willing to move this motion? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Roach. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. We're on to item 6C, the 2025 Asset Management Report Cards and Update. There's no presentation. Did anyone have questions for Cassandra? I had one, and I was hoping that you could help to describe how it is that our base budgeting has changed over through the use of the asset management plan, because we've started to, as I understand it, include operating for our assets so that we prevent increasing the infrastructure deficit. Can you help to unpack that a bit?
Thank you to the chair. So in around 2016, when the asset management team started being formed, the city made a change to our budgeting process so that when we put forward a request through the capital budget process that we're going to build a new asset, whether it is assuming something that developers have built or we're going to build a new building, that we also request the additional operating expenses through the operating budget. So they're directly linked. And you'll see that when you approve the operating budget, you'll see approve this capital project and approve the operating link. So we make that direct correlation between we're going to own new assets, so we need to responsibly prevent and repair and maintain them as best as we can.
And I really appreciate that, because I think that a lot of us are getting questions in terms of what's different between the city's budget and some of the other budgets of municipalities near to us. But I think that that is one big piece that we do very differently, in that we plan ahead rather than allowing our infrastructure deficit to grow.
Through you, the chair, I believe that's correct. I think that we do a good job. I think that there's always, through any process, room for improvement, but I think we've done a really good job to allow council the opportunity to make the decision to maintain our assets as best as we can.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wright, yep.
Through you, Chair, thanks. I always love this report. So it's the one I really look forward to really understand where we're at with our combined city assets. And so I just have one question really that pertains to how we're funding the infrastructure gap. And we know that we've had some considerable headwinds, in terms of the uncertainty out there in the markets, which can have knock-on effects to our supply chain and how we maintain assets. The report points out that we would need, that the annual investment increase of approximately 2 to 2.5% over the next 25 years would be required in order to reach that desired condition that, sort of keeps things in balance. And we've had a federal budget come down that does commit some money to municipal infrastructure. And I suppose what I'm wondering is, given that municipalities are responsible for approximately 60% of infrastructure across Canada, and we are the lower tier municipality in this makeup, what sort of certainty are we seeing from the federal government in order to try and help us stay whole as a municipality when that's a big burden, like 2 to 2.5%?
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, at this point there is no certainty of how that money is going to be allocated to municipalities. I think the federal government did a good job of presenting some level of funding that they're going to do, but they haven't made any decisions over how that money will be allocated and to what levels it will be allocated. So it's a wait-and-see game at this point.
And just as a follow-up, so we could probably assume that then it will likely continue to flow through grants that are competitive in nature. Is that sort of how we're operating at the moment?
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, it's possible that it will be allocated through grants. My wish that it will be allocated through something like the Canada Community Building Fund, where it's a certain level based on population, but it's possible that it will be all through competitive grants.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, and thanks for the report, Cassandra. Just wanted to check in on one of the columns where it says some facilities are listed as very poor, but there's work that's being done at Albert McCormick and also Moses Springer. So I'm curious if that was captured in the assessment.
Through the chair to the mayor, at this point, we have to wait until all of the work is done and then the information is uploaded into the DSS post. The commitment on the facility side is that generally within a year to a year and a half is when we will see those improvements. So it's very poor until we see that work done. And I know that FDMS is working very diligently to complete all the projects and then get the work to us on time.
Okay. Well, so we'll then I guess in the next major report, or I guess in a year or so, we'll hopefully see a big improvement on that side. Thank you. I'm also just curious about, in terms of like existing buildings as they're being renovated, and thinking about climate change and the impacts of climate change. So I'm just curious what, if anything's changing in with particularly the materials or processes or designs to, lessen the impact that our buildings may experience because of, the various impacts of climate change. So what's kind of being done to try and mitigate and adapt?
Through the chair to the mayor, at this point, I'm actually going to ask Commissioner Van Oudegem to help me out with this because I can't specifically say the answers to that.
Okay, thanks.
Through you, Chair Freeman, to the mayor. So, really good question. Generally on all of our infrastructure renewal projects, one thing we try to do is take a best practice approach. And so, for example, where we're upgrading a boiler system, for example, we would look to electrify that boiler system to help reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, while at the same time doing things like improving the building envelope just to decrease the overall energy usage of that building in general. So a lot of really good work has happened between asset management and facilities design management services just around sort of that ongoing renewal and tying it to the greenhouse gas and energy reduction programs.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really good to hear. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. With that, is there someone interested to move the motion? Moved by Councillor Wright, because it's her favorite report. I will say that I appreciate how much effort goes into this report, because I know that it is lengthy. So thank you for all of that, Cassandra. And seconded by Councillor Vasic. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay, that puts Cass off the hot seat. The 2023 to 26 strategic plan, the 2025 progress report. So welcome, Michelle. I know that you have a presentation for us and we're looking forward to finding out how we're doing.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chair, and thank you, Council. I'm going to present some good news today about our progress that we've made on our strategic planning. And so just to provide a bit of a background, you'll probably, oh no, I've got the automatic, thank you. I'm not sure who's doing this, but thank you. Okay. Proceeding. Council will probably recall that the strategic plan was approved in June of 2023, and last year in November, Sandy Little brought an update report to Council remarking on the progress made in the year of 2024. Today's Council report is reporting on the successes and achievements we've had in 2025, and then around this time next year, Council will receive the final and third report with the update. And then following that, there will be the development of a new strategic plan. 4 metrics have been identified in the report in front of council to track our success. Yeah, it is. I'll just keep talking, and thank you, Rook, for helping remove those transitions. So we've identified 4 metrics to track our success. These metrics were identified in the strat plan itself and also in the update report that council received last year. And these are how we're doing with the implementation of our business plan initiatives. We've created sort of more, for illustrative purposes, more detailed information about strategic stories that provide a more fulsome explanation of how some of our strategic objectives are being achieved. And you'll see in front of you a paper copy of that so that you can review it. We are also gathering information from our community conversations to help inform how we're doing, and then key performance indicators. For the business plan implementation, we are well on our way to achieving them within the timeframe expected. We have 88% of our initiatives on track for completion or already completed. And I did want to note that, in fact, there are more initiatives completed than appear within this little graphic, because many of those items that are identified as on track don't have an end date. So they'll never be officially in the completed category. And so if you count those as well as those that are completed, that represents 53% of the initiatives. So we're effectively complete on just over half of the initiatives. For the strategic stories, I'll just whip through some of the high-level achievements we've made. We've worked to improve sidewalk clearing to improve winter mobility. And with that, we've increased our assisted snow clearance program by 107%, so more recipients receive that support. And we've worked to improve our compliance monitoring and approaches to strive towards greater compliance on snow removal. We've made some investments in our active transportation infrastructure with new multi-use paths and new sidewalks. And we've achieved some fairly meaningful GHG reductions at a number of our facilities, including 75% GHG reduction at Moses Springer and 52% GHG reduction at Rim Park. We've improved our fire prevention, education, and response capacity by hiring 12 new firefighters and adding 2 new vehicles. We've expanded our planning for affordable housing by allocating lands to support 85 affordable units that are going to be approved today, I believe. And then we've allocated $1 million+ in grants for projects that will include 146 affordable units. And then last of all, we've worked to transition from web content to digital service. And I believe we've just released our new website today. And as well as that, we have been working on bringing forward 35 new services to come online in 2026. Over the year 2024 and 2025, we've engaged in both drop-in community conversation sessions as well as structured sessions. 4 of the structured sessions occurred in 2025, and those are reported on in your staff report. We got quite a lot of feedback, both good and constructive criticisms about the work we're doing, and we're going to be taking that feedback to help inform the implementation of the remainder of the business plan initiatives, as well as using that feedback as a starting point for our strategic planning process starting in 2027. Last of all, our key performance indicators include the READY indicator of plans adopted. So we have Council having approved the Get Ready plan and an implementation plan all in 2025. We've made some meaningful progress on our corporate climate action plans. We've allocated 25 acres of city-owned lands to go towards affordable housing, and we've increased our seasonal programming for recreational services by 21% from 2023 to now. For our infrastructure and transportation systems, as you heard from Cassandra, we continue to work to ensure that our assets are in fair or better condition. And we have seen in our statistics monitoring that the overall collisions and pedestrian collisions have been going on a downward trend since about 2023, 2022. For innovation and future ready, we've identified 67 collaborations that we have ongoing with post-secondary institutions and over 2.5 million successful interactions with our website and either residents or customers. So in summary, I'm pleased to say that the city is on track to complete our business plan initiatives. We've made some fairly significant progress on our strategic priorities and objectives. But we also know we have more work to do. The work is never fully complete, and we will reflect on the feedback we received from our community conversations work and think about how we can integrate that feedback into our initiatives that we're working on, and also to help inform investments in the future. The evaluation of the metrics that were used today, we'll do an ongoing review of those metrics. We're not proposing to change up the metrics midstream, but for the future 2027 and onward strategic planning process, we'll probably take a look at the metrics that we use today and determine whether additional metrics need to be added and whether we want to tweak the ones that we used in this report. And then last of all, we will start work following today on our next year's update, and hopefully we'll be able to report that 100% of our initiatives are complete and that we are on track to achieve our strategic objectives. So that's all I have today. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions for Michelle? Councillor Hanmer, go ahead.
Not really a question, just more a comment. Thank you very much. I like this report. I always like the update to see where we're coming with our strategic plan, and it is encouraging to see that we're making great progress. We still do have some areas of improvement and places to move. I also like the summary report that was on our tables today, and I hope that will be available to residents, because it's done in a way that it's telling a story, and most importantly, the impact that the initiatives we've been able to achieve are having on the residents in our community. So thank you for that.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Michelle, for this update and for the work you're doing. And appreciate as Councillor Hanmer said, appreciate these strategic stories, which I guess is also thanks to our Director of Corporate Communications. So thanks, Carrie. I appreciate you including not maybe the picture of me from the community conversations, but just the fact that we continue to consult throughout the year on the strategic plan, so that we can have these touch points to know, where we are with the community, and are they with us? Where do we maybe where we haven't quite hit the mark, where are we doing really well, some ways to sort of pivot and adapt mid-year or mid strategic plan. And I just think it's really important to have this with us today, as we are also about to reconfirm or reaffirm the budget process, because obviously the two link together, and it's the consultation that we heard 3 years ago that lead to the decisions that we've made in our budget, and then the updates that we have through those conversations that also we really take into account in that budget process. So just wanted to say thanks for your support on that. A couple of questions. I'm curious about in the snow clearing, where it says that 71% of work orders are complied. What happens with the other percentage of work orders that are not complied with?
Through the chair, I was just looking to see if Grant Curlew was in the audience. I thought I saw him. That statistic is reflective of really how quickly people respond to a work order without the city having to do the work themselves. So that gap between, say, 71% and 100%, I believe, is the city taking responsibility and then charging the property owner after the fact. So what we would like to see is 100% compliance, I think, and we're working towards that. I think that the reporting, though, while we saw a dip in compliance, it also reflects the incredible snowy year that we had last winter. And so while there was a lower percentage of compliance in terms of shoveling when the city provided the notice, there was also way more snow events that happened and much more shoveling required. So we'll see how we do next year and hopefully see that number go up.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's just a reminder of how important it is for residents who, whether they own or they rent the property, to get those sidewalks clear, because it really does restrict people's ability to move freely around the city with strollers or mobility aids or, just walking. So thanks for that. I just also, because we did have our website launching, our refreshed website launching today, just maybe if you could kind of give us a bit of an overview, or maybe Carrie Van Niekerk can, about, some of the impetus for the change, what customers or our residents can expect to see when they do land on our website.
Through the chair, I'll defer to Carrie. I think she's best positioned to answer that one.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair, to the Mayor. With the new website, what residents will initially see is an updated look and feel to hopefully make the layout more accessible to anyone who's looking for our information. There is an AI-assisted search function, again, to help people find the information they're looking for more quickly. And a lot of what you can't see is embedded in the back end, and this new version of the website is ready to help us launch our upcoming CRM, Citizen Relationship Management software projects that's going to help. Basically, we're transitioning the website from just being a source of information to being a truly online digital City Hall digital service center. So as we load more digital services onto the website, residents will have the accessibility and access to be able to self-serve a lot of the functionality that they do from the comfort of their own home. All of which to say we will still always remain an in-person service organization as well.
Right. Thank you very much. And the timeline for getting all of those, the online parts of the different service delivery, is that within this upcoming year? Is that what?
The initial services through the CRM will be launching in 2026, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Certainly, I can recall when I was campaigning, hearing about customer service related challenges and really frustrations. We heard that fairly often, so I'm really, really pleased to see that this is being addressed as one of the key priorities. So thank you. So thanks for that. It's look forward to hearing how it rolls out over the next month or so. Thank you so much to you and your team for the work on that.
Councillor Wright.
Thanks. I just have through you, Chair, I have a what's next question, which when we started off our term of council, we had the results of a municipal services satisfaction assessment, and I'm just curious whether that's something that we plan to continue with when we transition from the strategic plan to the next term of council.
Through the chair to Councillor Wright, I think, I don't have a specific answer today, but definitely we're going to look back on the approaches that worked for the last strategic plan, and definitely want to replicate those that worked, and maybe reevaluate some of those that you might want to make some tweaks to. So I'll take that back, keep note of that, and think about bringing that forward again if it was useful.
Other questions, Council? Seeing none, there's a recommendation to receive the report for information. It's moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. We are on to item 6E, Reserves and Reserve Funds Annual Update. There's a report prepared by Julie Coppicer. Julie, I wonder if you could just kind of give Council any update on the feedback that we heard from Audit Committee as it relates to these, because I know that they went through them quite in detail. If I didn't know if you or Brad wanted to speak to that.
Through you, Chair Freeman, I can I can take that question, but thanks to Julie for preparing this report. With this being a financial control policy, it is one of the items that is within the audit committee's purview. So we did take that to the audit committee in November, and I think their feedback was very positive. They were appreciative of the work that staff is doing to manage these reserves diligently. The recommended changes, the audit committee was supportive of. They understood why staff was recommending what for the most part is housekeeping changes and then just the introduction of 2 new reserves. So overall, I thought the feedback was very good and we appreciate that partnership with them. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions on this report, Council? Seeing none, is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're on to item 6F, City Utilities in 2026 rates. I understand there's a presentation that's been prepared by Dean and Lee, and so I'll just give them a minute to get settled at the podium. Welcome.
Up here. Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council and our public. Today we're going to be here to talk to you about the 2026 city utilities rates. And I'm going to start off with our objectives for rate setting. And what we're attempting to do through the rate structure is to ensure that we have sustainable and reliable operating funding to take care of not only the regulatory but customer requirements. So do we have enough water and wastewater collections and stormwater facilities to take care of all things water in the community. We also want to make sure that we have enough resources to take care of our infrastructure maintenance and rehab and make sure it's operating well and it's reliable. We also want to smooth out and have very stable rate changes over time. And also have those reserve rates set in their council targets. So very critical there. And the last is really the capital investment requirements to make sure that we address the infrastructure gaps as outlined in the city's asset management plan. And thanks to Cassandra for the overview today. And I think you can see that there are some ongoing gaps associated, especially with wastewater and stormwater. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is fresh off the press, last week the region announced that there are concerns with the water supply capacity in the region area. And I think it's really important to talk about that as we get into our rate setting, talk about our rates in general for the city, because we don't have any details yet, but what we do want to ensure is that we're going to be working with the region very collaboratively to ensure that we have a good plan for the region area and the area municipalities. So that we've talked to the region already on Friday, some of the city leadership, and we've expressed our interest in working with the region very collaboratively to make sure that we're addressing that. I think it's very important that the region also obtains the appropriate professional engineering expertise and technical advice around the issue. And I think that's something that we're going to be monitoring and ensuring that we provide assistance on that front as needed. And I think the other really critical piece, and it wasn't in the news release from the region, but I think it's important to consider the other offset opportunities for water. And number one is conservation. So we really need to think about conservation in all of its forms across our community. So that's not only an AM responsibility, so all of our AM counterparts, but also at the regional level, and make sure that that's really enveloped in a very strong plan going forward. Anything that you can offset means that you don't have to build something that is required for drinking water capacity. And I think the other thing we need to do is look at innovative solutions for water. So other places that are water scarce in the world, Southwest US, Singapore, many nations all throughout the world, like Australia, a great example, they are in a water scarce situation, and there are many innovations that have been built and rolled out in these jurisdictions to help with that water supply. And that could be wastewater reuse. I'm not going to say we're drinking from toilets. That was a joke. But but we do want to look at, could we supply reuse wastewater for industries that don't need potable water? Therefore, we save our drinking water supply. So these are innovations that we really want to look at, extremely important. And so I think through this, you'll see that we're going to have some financial details that Dean's going to provide, and then I'm going to get into some impacts and initiatives and impacts of the division, and you'll see some threads of, let's say, the theme of water conservation and water offset. So, Dean, over to you.
Thank you, Lee. City utility rates fund water supply distribution, water collection and treatment, along with stormwater management. For 2026, the overall city utilities budget is 93 million. 47% of that amount goes to pay the region for water purchases and for treatment of wastewater. 21% goes towards our daily operation programs and administration, and 32% goes towards funding reserves for our planned capital projects and rehab work. Revenue from rates is budgeted at approximately $80 million, with an additional $12 million anticipated from debt financing. Household impact is a calculation that takes into account the effective date for the rate changes, consumption estimates for an average household, and the fixed monthly stormwater and service fees. All this information is translated into a dollar figure that increased the average household would pay in 2026 versus 2025. For 2026, the average annual household impact is estimated to be about $1,466 for all cities' utility services. This is an increase of $102 over the 2025 amount, or 7.4%. This chart is for the water and sanitary services only and provides insight into the average household cost impacts for local area municipalities over the past several years. Waterloo continues to compare favorably to the other lower tier within the region, and the 2026 annual impact for Waterloo remains below current 2025 amounts for to our neighbors. This chart shows stormwater charges across various cities in Southern Ontario. It provides for a relative comparison of annual costs for those that have a dedicated stormwater charge. Within Waterloo region, Kitchener is the only city that has had several years of stormwater fees, and Cambridge has just started one in July of 2025, as noted in the reports. A direct comparison across cities is very difficult for stormwater since it's less defined compared to water and sanitary and can vary widely across jurisdictions depending on local geographic landscapes such as water bodies and creek networks and how stormwater assets are defined. The rate stabilization reserve is a source of financing to supply the emergency or unplanned funding for the water and sanitary sections. There is no dedicated rate stabilization reserve within stormwater, though, as revenue in stormwater is more stable and less prone to external influence than water and sanitary. Deviation from the council-approved target is shown as a result of an unanticipated reserve draw outlined in Corp 2023-054, but we are building the reserves back up towards the target level. It's anticipated to be near target level in 2030 for water, and will take a little bit more time for sanitary. And while the stormwater reserve projected balance can be volatile, this is planned to help avoid large annual rate changes due to a fluctuating capital program over time. Similar to water and sanitary capital rates, the stormwater modeling also uses debt financing to reduce large or volatile rate changes over time. The bumps in stormwater reserve is as a result of regional priority changes and updates from the DC bylaw, moving capital outflows around. next year, when planning for the 2027 budget, the city will have an opportunity to reflow our capital projects to better make use of our financial resources.
All right, thanks, Dean. All right, so in terms of division initiatives and impacts, just an overview of what we've been doing within division, within each of the sections. And so for water, really good news this year is that we've completed all installations of the advanced metering infrastructure. So that's those are the little units that allow us to remotely sense the water usage at each residence or business. And that's also pulled into a new meter data management system. So that's something that we've rolled almost ready to go to live. How many, looking at Natasha, very close. And you'll see the next bullet. Really, this is the theme about saving water. And we've had a very continued effort to look for leak detection across the city. And so this is using, we actually have several tools that we use for this. And it's actually a program now that is consistently deployed throughout the year. And it's going out to look for all those leaks in our system. That you can understand, when we're in a water scarce or we have a water supply constraint, that's very valuable. Also related to that, valve and hydrants. So we have a very robust maintenance program for those, and we are making sure that those valves and hydrants are continuously maintained, so we optimize the life of those assets. So if we don't have to, if we're turning valves and we're maintaining hydrants and making sure that they don't freeze up, we don't have to replace them as often. So really important there. We're also looking at a multi-year contract for procurement of water meters, and that really helps to give us very established pricing over 5 years for those water meters, and we don't get any spikes throughout that 5-year period. And mentioned by Carrie, we are looking at the customer relationship management platform. That's our division is starting to work on that. I'll talk about that in a couple slides. For wastewater, we're looking at new methods and tools for inspection of the sanitary system. So that's been very effective over the last couple of years. It's telling us an awful lot about our system and where to focus the rehabilitation, whether it be capital or other flushing or other repairs, spot repairs. And along with that, we're using new analysis and reporting tools to really optimize the overall expenditure of resources. We've completed our annual operating report for the CLI ECA, which is the environmental compliance approvals for the wastewater system. And a really important one is the initiation of an inflow infiltration study. So we're looking at, okay, what is getting into our sanitary network, and anything that we can eliminate from getting in via inflow or infiltration, seepage into the system, really puts money in our pocket because we don't send money to the region for treatment of water that doesn't need to be treated. So that's...
I just want to point out that we're quite a bit over time.
Okay.
So
almost done here. So stormwater, just quickly go through this. I think in the recommendations, you can see there's a right sizing adjustment to the leaf collection budget. That's the big one. And again, annual reporting done for the stormwater system. And we do a lot of monitoring in the stormwater system as well to help us understand the behavior. And in summary, you can see that the rates align with staff table 2024-2026 budget and the capital forecast of 2027 to 33. We're looking at a total average household impact of $101. The rates do compare favorably to the neighboring municipalities. We're going to monitor the reserves that we have against targets, and we are continue to invest in programs, maintenance activities, and asset rehab that provides continuous supply, safe and reliable drinking water, wastewater collection, and source water protection with effective stormwater management. And around the CRM, our division is one of the first to provide pretty much an entire suite of digital service requests and digital workflows, and that will be coming in 2026. And I will open it up to questions.
thank you for your report. Questions, Councillor Vasek.
Yeah, thanks so much for your report and the presentation. Just thinking about making decisions on council, it's really great to see the many initiatives that you're doing to protect water, the distribution of water, and particularly in light of the challenges. When decisions come to council, what are some of the key things we should be thinking about and asking from a policy perspective? Because I know we have a lot of, like you highlighted, individual responsibility to conserve water on our own, but really the impact comes when you do things as a society, as a municipality, as the province, as the federal government, a systems approach really rather than an individual focus, because individual actions add up, but then we blame individuals for using too much water, but they just want to have a nice garden. And so what questions should we be asking in addition to what we might already be seeing, for example, in the asset management report cards that came today, or in planning reports that include water considerations as well? Is there a lens we should be looking through when decisions come to council?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councillor Bassick, and through the chair to you. I think the questions to ask, I think number one is a total life cycle. So what is the total life cycle of some of the things that we need to do? And obviously that total life cycle has a significant, it's heavyweight on regulatory requirements. So that's something that we can't ever sidestep, is the regulatory requirements of doing certain activities with our water system and our wastewater system, pump stations, and keeping those assets in the best operating shape. So I think the total life cycle is one. And then I think to your point about conservation, yeah, it does, I think the time is upon us where, I think we have to there will be some compromises about how much water we use and what we can pay for, because we can certainly pay for all sorts of water and infrastructure to have beautiful gardens and water, but that comes at a cost. So I think that's the trade-off. And not to say that we can't do all of that, but we have to, potentially make some of the important decisions. And it could be, again, alternative supplies and other ways to do that. So really, perhaps it's promoting rainwater harvest and some different infrastructure options that we could look at for the community, as other places in the world have. So I think that's another one. And then, I think the social piece is important as well. So are we maintaining full service to everybody in the community? That's a really important one. So, because water and wastewater should be, that everybody should have access to water and wastewater servicing. So, yeah, does that good? Okay.
Other questions, Council? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Managing all of this, the water utility operations, there aren't a whole lot of things that we have control over. So we're dealing with, we don't have control over how people use water. We can incent them to do a better job of it through conservation efforts. We're dependent on the upper tier for water quality and capacity planning. We have provincial regulations and legislation that we're working within. We have the impacts of climate change, too much water, too little water, changing in our seasons, which is obviously affecting our leaf collection program. What are we doing to manage this uncertainty? Because it's a lot of factors.
Through your chair to Councillor Wright, that's a really good question. That's I think that is the world that we live in. I think the climate piece is an incredibly important one, because we are seeing that even may be some of the impact we're seeing to the regional water system. So has the variation climate, peaky precipitation events and different freeze-thaw cycles where perhaps you don't get as much recharge as you once did, growth in the community. So there's much factors. And I think that's something that we as a utility, we're plugged into. Benchmarking, we actually participate in a national benchmarking initiative that is done annually. We have all of our infrastructure data tracked, so we're plugged into that as as a means to stay on top of, okay, what is the community across, or what is the municipal industry across Canada doing? What are the trends, and what can we do to leverage? And that's, when I say leverage, it's, how can we learn from others? Not, we don't want to be being the making decisions, I think, without really checking, okay, is this a good investment in what we need to, the problem we need to solve? Has somebody else done it? So we can really be assured of the money going as far as it can. We also are, we participate in the Canadian Water Network. We're part of the consortium leadership group. So that is, that's been very valuable, just to, again, hear about industry topics at a very high level through, directors and general managers to, again, same idea, and also learn from them. And I think that's, the more data that we can get, that's one key thing. So can we get a lot of data? We've done that in the last 2-3 years, has really changed the way, collecting a lot more data so that we can make more better informed decisions. Also looking at, innovation. So can we get different, more valuable types of data through different means to be, have a data-driven decision making. So that's another, still lots to do, but I think those are definitely, the data piece allows us to make risk-based decisions. So if we have risks with our infrastructure, well, that's where we need to invest in the riskiest infrastructure, not, we don't want to be fixing perfectly good infrastructure. And we need to dedicate it to the things that need to have upgrades and repairs done. So how does that,
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analysis of, how many different inputs that you're taking in all the time. The follow-up point that I would just ask you about is, there are a lot of decision makers who are part of managing our water regionally. And as councils, we don't all have the same water literacy level. That's something that's becoming an increasing concern in Canada. There are a number of water literacy initiatives getting off the ground right now. And, once you get to the federal level, you see a lot of this kind of playing out in the macro scale. But here regionally, what can we do to increase that water literacy for our shared councils?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Wright again. I think that's something that we should be, at staff level, we should do probably a better job of. And I think that's, I think with the news of last week, I think that will drive it. So my plan is to, I think we have a plan for a briefing note to be sent out to the councils. But I think your point is a good one, though. How do we really extend beyond? I think it would be really great to have essentially a group of councillors that have a shared, let's say, infrastructure interest or mandate. So you're our IPPW liaison councillor, and the region has a infrastructure and sustainability councillor. I think it'd be great to have a group of councillors that perhaps could be given presentations and updates maybe a couple times a year, just to translate that or to convey that knowledge. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I don't necessarily think we've always done a good job of that. So,
Thanks for those ideas. I think that's something for us all to think on. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. It just struck me when you were talking, Lee, about technologies and the ways to look at what needs to be done and prioritizing. So one example that we spoke of earlier this year would have been Amos Street, which required infrastructure. Did you want to speak to that at all, just as an example? Because it no longer, well, for now, does not require, so it's something that, in terms of capital projects, we were able to not have to do at this time.
Yeah, through your chair to Councillor Rowe. Yeah, I think that's a good example. Using, if we can find out, it may be through different inspections, if we can find out, and even through different techniques, can we resolve specific asset class issues without having to do a full dig. I think generally we try to do that in any case. And that's, we work very closely with engineering services on that planning. And generally, I think we have a pretty robust planning process now, which is great for those infrastructure investments. But I think your point's a good one, though. We do find issues, and we do have to resolve those through maybe one-off type of repairs. And I think when we're looking at those, I think taking maybe a non-conventional approach in some cases, and not, when I say non-conventional, I don't mean, not out of conformance with, legislation regs, but maybe a different way, maybe a more cost-effective way to address something. I think that's a really good point. We had McDougall had a main break under the culvert, and we actually dealt with that as a small capital project, almost like a design build through our division, and it worked quite well. So we work with engineering services, but we were able to deliver that project for very, very cost effectively, and that's that's another way to make the dollars go further. So yeah, good, very good question.
Thank you. And my other question, and you may have already covered this, but I'm thinking back to your slides and it's not in my mind. Can you just touch on the utility rate increases are a combination of regional and city? There's two portions there.
Yeah, through your chair to Councillor Rowe. Yes, you can see in the chart that, or in the report, but in the chart, actually, let's go back to let's go the other way. So you can see in this chart, we have region water and wastewater rates down at the second from the bottom line. So you can see the percentage increase for the region portion, which is, so in 2025, 574 for a typical 17 cubic meter usage per month. That's going up by 5.9%. So overall, the $33, it's about 33% of our total rate increase is just a water supply and then the wastewater treatment. So yeah, that's a good, very good point about it's not all City of Waterloo increases.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, thanks for the report and the information you're sharing, particularly around conservation and the inflow and infiltration. And I'm really pleased to hear that that you're thinking of solutions, and because we know that every bit of water that we have, we need to use it really wisely, and we also need to, we're paying for it, so we want to make sure that we're getting our full value from it. So thanks for looking at those things. And just on the region of Waterloo water issue, I just wanted to remind ourselves that in Waterloo region, we have a really, I think one of the most complex water systems, certainly in the province, because we're working with 80% of it is groundwater, and the rest of it comes from the Grand River, and it's a huge responsibility for staff, and then of course for council to manage that water system, and it's really critical that it's done well responsibly and with the proper expertise and with a lot of care, because it's a really critical balance that we have with groundwater, with the primarily being a groundwater community. But it's also, so I appreciate your statements that you made at the outset of your presentation, Lee, and also that you underline the fact that the water quality is not in question. Like that is a really important piece for everyone to know. And I also, just to pick up on Councillor Rowe's point about the water rates and the utility rates, I just want to remind people how safe it is to drink and how cost effective it is to drink municipal water. It's far, far cheaper than buying bottled water. Bottled water really is it's far more expensive than municipal drinking water. So yes, the rates do need to increase, slightly in a very managed way in order to make sure that the infrastructure is operating properly. But if you compare it to things like bottled water, it's still fair to say that it's, municipal drinking water is a huge bargain. So I just hope we can continue to work to encourage people to drink our city water, which they're paying for, and which we're treating really, which is the highest quality, rather than bottled water. But my question, and I do have, I'll just, get off that soapbox, but I think it's a really important one. It's just about the leaf collection. Can you just kind of remind us the origin story of leaf collection and the request for some additional funding for it through this rate increase, but through the budget process? Could you just give us an overview of that program?
Yeah, thank you. Through Chair to you, Mayor McCabe. So I do want to say and definitely second the safety of our drinking water. Really, really important to say that, and it is safe. And I've worked all across Canada on water, and I would say the region's water system is probably one of the most complex in Canada. And even when you look at into the States, probably one of the most in North America. So really very complex system when you consider all of the different parts of it. So, and as many pressure zones as you have. So on the leaf collection, I've been here at the city for about 5 years. So I don't know the absolute origin of the leaf collection program, but how it's been funded is that, so it's actually funded through the stormwater rates, because the origination was that, leaves on the street do contribute to blockage of catch basins and stormwater infrastructure. So the intent was to, hey, let's make sure that we don't have blockages, and we will collect those leaves and get them off to more of a centralized way to process them. So that's the original intent. I'm going to ask Ron if you have any more information on the leaf collection program. Historically, you can jump in a minute, but really it's just that one-time budget correction is to make sure that we have enough budget to service that program. And because it's coming out of stormwater, we've been running a deficit in previous years. And that has a bottom line impact to the ability for us in stormwater to dedicate that money to capital. And stormwater is actually, it has the biggest funding gap. So that's one of our division's concerns, is that, stormwater, we do have a lot of infrastructure, pipes and ponds and channels, creeks, all of it, and culverts, all of that needs a lot of attention. And so every dollar that we can't put into the gap, it's, where we get degradation, and flooding is obviously a very big concern for private property. So that's the intent of the budget top up. Maybe I'll hand it over. Ron, do you have any more historical basis for the program? I can't recall how long it's been in existence.
Through Councillor Freeman to the mayor. Mr. Anderson's our resident historian, but I'll tell you what I know. I think it goes back to the days when the city was responsible for its own waste collection, and that was part of a service that was offered way back. And Tim, you can give us the date, but it's well before the 80s. And it was also during an era, I think, where it's fair to say people didn't compost leaves as much. There was a big focus on manicured lawns. We didn't see the xeriscaping or the naturalized gardens where people are composting more leaves. So there was an effort, as Lee said, to try to keep those leaves out of the storm sewer network, keep the roads clean, and deliver those leaves to the regional landfill facility where they could be properly composted. Now we're seeing a shift in public preference for that, and I think there are trends in other municipalities that don't offer any loose leaf collection at all, because as we know, it's expensive. There are GHG impacts when you're collecting all those leaves with heavy equipment. But there's also a public desire in heavily treated areas to do a little bit of leaf collection. So I think it's an evolution. There have been a couple of staff reports to previous councils with options to scale back loose leaf collection. In fact, we've done that. We generally speaking do only one pass in all of the 16 zones through which leaves are collected. But it is an ongoing cost, and there are probably alternatives that we should continue to evaluate as we go forward that can be used to mitigate impacts to the stormwater sewers, but also to maybe see a shift in collection and more bagging of leaves and composting.
Okay. Thanks very much for that very comprehensive answer. My follow-up question was going to be, what do you think the impacts to our storm system would be if we did start to look at ways to reduce that level of service, or possibly eliminate it at some point?
Through Council Freeman to you, Mayor. Yeah, as I said, I think there are other municipalities that have done it successfully. Some of the surrounding townships, for example, don't offer that service. And what it does, in essence, is it sees people not raking those leaves to the curb line and onto the road that are introduced into the storm network, more vigorously than if they're raked, onto the private side and collected that way.
Okay.
And then obviously we would look at what other mitigation measures would be necessary, such as using our vacuum trucks to do some spot checking on catch basins, and maybe even offering the odd location where we do some spot cleanup to help residents.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that. I mean, I'm not going to suggest at this point that we change what's in the request for this year, but I do think it's a program that we should take a good hard look at, and with some of the suggestions you just offered, Commissioner Ormson, and with some of the changes you said in the way that the public are managing some of their leaves and that, and just always being cognizant of, this is a program that's up to over $400,000. It's a lot of money to spend on collecting and managing leaves. So, okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Leaf collection is not the most wonderful time of the year. Okay. It is the least wonderful time of the year. And as someone who has spent 20 years around this table going back and forth about getting rid of the LEAF program in every single council term, I can tell you that it is really not worth anyone's time to spend any more time researching this. What we've done is we've got it down to where it's as low as it can go without getting ourselves beat up to the, because people, anyways, I would say there are things that we could spend time doing, and reviewing the leaf collection program again is probably not one of them. One of the pieces I wanted to speak to is the leakage and infiltration, and I think investing resources and finding ways to reduce infiltration into the sewers, so reducing the amount of water that is cleaned and reducing leakage out of our pressure valves and our pressure system is critically important. I mean, those are driving up rates, and we see that in terms of the difference between what we are charging people in their cubic meters to their houses and what we're treating at the wastewater treatment plant. And so I just wanted to point out that I appreciate that. It's interesting when we look at our water system and how much we rely on it and just expect that if we turn on the tap, there is water there, and not only water, but that it's clean water. I had the situation in Yellowknife where I turned the tap on and there was no water. And I learned that not all municipalities have water services that have underground pipe systems that deliver water to where you live. And so I had to call for the water truck to come and refill the water system. So I think that we're incredibly fortunate here in Waterloo, notwithstanding your comments about the complexity and the wellheads and all of the various and sundry ways in which we both clean our water, distribute our water, and ensure that the water, once it reaches the households, meets the drinking water standard. So thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's more questions for Mr. Dermott. Okay. I think with that, I'm going to see if there's someone who wants to move. There's a series of recommendations here, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation and your clear outline of the importance of the systems that you manage. With that, Council, we are moving on to item 6G, which is the 2026 budget confirmation. And I just had a few introductory comments to make, and I know that the mayor has a few introductory comments as well. So I just wanted to start by saying in a few minutes, our finance team will present the 2026 budget confirmation for our consideration and reaffirmation. This is the final year of our 3-year budget and the last budget confirmation for this term of council. I would like to recognize the effort of staff and council that went into developing the 3-year operating and capital budget for 24 to 26. The 3-year budget process that we use at the city provides efficiency and stability in our long-term planning. It also provides flexibility to respond to our dynamic environment, which we will see evident as part of this budget confirmation report. I'd like to recognize the additional work of staff on this budget reaffirmation process. As in the previous year, staff have identified new pressures and opportunities that will impact our organization in 2026 and onwards. While the 2026 property tax impact they are recommending for us to reaffirm remains the same, you will see from the report and their presentation that it took $2.5 million in reductions and other offsets to keep us there, bringing the 2024 to 26 total budget efficiencies, savings, and other revenue opportunities to $5.6 million, which is the equivalent of 5.2% in property tax savings. And I think that this is what the citizens ask us to do, is to find savings. And I'm trying to reiterate the fact that in this 3-year budget process, staff have found $5.6 million in savings. We continue to face pressures, including some that were not part of our original 3-year budget deliberations. In this budget, we are funding updated labor and other committed operational obligations, as well as covering provincial and legislative changes and downloaded services, all while ensuring the city continues to provide the programs and services that people rely on today. Again, as we know, the province has made changes since we did our 3-year budget that has increased the downloading to our level of government. Staff had the goal of maintaining a balanced budget at the previously approved property tax rate and avoiding deferring committed costs to the next budget, because isn't that kind of easy to push it forward to a future council? This is particularly important in this final affirmation of our 3-year budget, that we are not deferring committed costs to a future council. This budget keeps our community safe, maintained, and moving. We continue to close our infrastructure funding gap while supporting our roads, parks, snow clearing, fire services, recreation programs, community facilities, arts and culture programming, and more. The capital budget has been adjusted, but we continue to invest in the well-being of Waterloo, promoting mental and physical health, tackling disparities brought about by lack of equity and inclusion, supporting environmental sustainability and climate adaptation, and promoting economic growth. My thanks to staff for your efforts in this work, and I look forward to your presentation, Brad. But I think before you start, the mayor has a few comments as well.
Thank you, Chair Freeman, and at the risk of being a little repetitive, I have some, I just also wanted to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to staff across the entire organization for the tremendous amount of work that goes into reviewing, managing, and updating the city's 3-year budget. It's a really complex process, and your professionalism and your dedication to it make it possible and make it understandable for us, so thank you. I also want to extend a special thanks to Councillor Freeman, who's our council finance liaison. Her commitment on behalf of both council and our residents ensures that we stay focused on delivering on our budget priorities responsibly, transparently, and as affordably as possible. To our Commissioner of Corporate Services, Philippa Reynolds, and her team, particularly Brad Witzel and Paul Henninga and Michael Pugliese, thank you for your leadership, expertise, and guidance throughout this entire process. So as Councillor Freeman said, today we are at the point of reaffirming the 2026 budget within our 3-year strategic plan, Strong, Sustainable, Together. Overall, our 3-year plan strikes a careful balance between affordability and responsibility. Together, we are funding essential programs, maintaining and renewing critical infrastructure, and positioning Waterloo for long-term success. And I want to stress that council and staff recognize that affordability is a real challenge for many residents. Costs for housing, groceries, utilities, and everyday essentials continue to rise, and we recognize that every increase matters to households and businesses and not-for-profits that serve our community. And that's why council and staff have been really deliberate in looking for opportunities to reduce or avoid costs throughout the budget process. And as Councillor Freeman said, over the past 3 years, a total of $5.6 million in efficiencies have been found. As again, that's approximately a 5.2% savings on the property tax levy. But today, through our discussions, we will continue to explore potential other ways to lower costs while maintaining the service levels on which we know residents expect and rely. And despite significant external pressures, staff have delivered a net zero adjustment that maintains our previously approved rate. And with the cost pressures the city has and is continuing to face, this is an accomplishment we should all recognize. And as, again, to underscore, as Councillor Freeman did, the proposed budget does not defer committed costs into the future. Deferring those pressures would have been the easier path to take, but that is not the approach that council or staff have typically taken, and I appreciate that continued commitment to long-term fiscal responsibility. The 2026 budget remains aligned with our 2024 to 2026 strategic plan, which council approved, even as our financial pressures have increased. So what are some of these cost pressures we're facing? There are some significant ones that have added strain to municipal budgets. Provincial downloading, along with legislative changes, have increased local municipal responsibilities without transferring any resources required to support them. Planning responsibilities in particular shifted from the region to the city on January 1st, 2025, with no accompanying funding. These provincially driven pressures amount to approximately $1.7 million or 1.6% on the tax levy. To respond to the increased planning timelines, the city had to hire 7 new planning staff, 2 lawyers, and a development engineer. And this is a permanent increase on our property tax base. Other cost pressures include inflation, which has eased but continues to affect both operations and capital budgets. The non-residential construction price index, which is up 4.21% year over year, and which has increased 46.57% since the beginning of 2021. This includes increased costs for materials such as asphalt, concrete, steel, and water mains. Unfortunately, in 2025, we have experienced slowed assessment growth, and are $823,000 below target. And that in and of itself is just shy of a 1% impact on our property tax rate. And of course, there's our ongoing payments to the Rim Park debt. The city is required to spend approximately $4 million annually from the property tax levy. But despite these pressures, the message from our residents has been clear. Protecting core services and investing in the future remain top priorities. And the city provides for more than 100 services. That's from a few parks, roads, winter maintenance, fire services, recreation, bylaw facilities, corporate services, arts and culture, and many, many more. And these are all delivered by our exceptional team of 857 staff. The 2026 operating budget continues to advance community priorities. And some of these are increased funding for parks and new playgrounds, including more accessible play structures. Strengthen fire protection with 8 additional firefighters proposed in this budget and 20 in total from 2024 to 2026. Enhanced winter sidewalk maintenance to support accessibility for all, increased preventative building maintenance and accessibility upgrades, and significant enhancements to customer service, including today's launch of our new and improved website, which supports modern digital service delivery and much improved customer service. So what does all this mean for residents? Residents can continue to expect delivery of reliable frontline services with targeted improvements in fire response, winter sidewalk maintenance, parks upkeep, accessibility, and service quality. And again, through today's discussion, we will continue to look for opportunities where we may be able to reduce costs, but while also maintaining the service levels, again, we know residents expect and rely on. So affordability remains one of the most pressing concerns for our residents, and it is central to Council's decision-making. We recognize that households, nonprofits, and businesses are managing higher costs for groceries, housing, insurance, and utilities, and we know that every dollar matters. Our 3-year budget strikes a careful balance between affordability and responsibility. Together, we are funding essential programs, maintaining and renewing critical infrastructure, and again, positioning Waterloo for long-term success. Council and staff remain committed to delivering improved outcomes and value for money, just as residents emphasized through their input into our strategic plan. So that being said, I'm sure we all have some additional questions for staff and for each other, and I look forward to our discussion. So thank you for allowing me the time, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brad Witzel and Michael Pugliese with a presentation.
Thank you, Chair Freeman. Good afternoon, Mayor, Chair Freeman, Council, staff, and members of the public. I'm here today to provide an overview of Report Corp 2025-042 and seek Council's approval of the 2026 budget confirmation. So on February 12th, 2024, Council approved the 3-year budget covering the periods of 2024 to 2026. The Municipal Act requires that when a city passes a multi-year budget, they must review and reaffirm that budget for every second and subsequent year. So today's confirmation of the 2026 budget is being sought, with 2026 representing the final year of this multi-year budget period. To support a formalized, transparent, and flexible process for multi-year budgeting, staff relies on policy FC011. This policy establishes a framework for annual adjustments to the budget as required. Since early 2024, various items and assumptions in the multi-year budget have changed, and the city is facing budget pressures from existing operating obligations and organizational review committed staff as part of the 2026 budget. So with the goal of maintaining the previously approved operating and capital budget investments and avoiding deferring current committed pressures to the next budget cycle, staff have developed the recommended net zero budget adjustment that, if approved today, will resolve these pressures for 2026 without an increased property tax impact. In addition, our multi-year budget policy outlines how any assessment growth shortfalls will be managed. I'll touch on both of these further in the coming slides. If confirmed, the 2026 tax base operating budget will be $115 million, funded by property taxes and a one-time tax rate stabilization reserve transfer to cover the assessment growth shortfall. The operating budget supports all 100+ services provided by the city, along with advancing council's strategic priorities. A few 2026 operating highlights include the addition of a full-time ready project lead to support the implementation of the Get Ready plan and the ongoing work of our Ready advocates. Increased funding for parks operating budget in support of new park infrastructure that's been added or is being added, including Action Sports Park, Dog Park, and St. Moritz Community Park. 2026 will see the third phase of the fire master plan expansion with an additional 8 firefighters being added. It will also see the third phase of the winter sidewalk maintenance service enhancement plan with staff beginning to clear sidewalks along regional roads in Zone 1 and increased building preventative maintenance funding. The 2026 property tax increase is comprised of 3.5% for base budget and operating impacts of capital and 2.9% for service level changes in infrastructure investment. For the average household, that's approximately $9 per month or $107 annually. The 2026 increase is unchanged from the original 3-year budget. The city's capital budget is an important component towards economic stimulus, council strategic plan implementation, and is a critical tool for local economic vitality. Achieving council's strategic priorities is an important factor towards the quality of life for the citizens and businesses of Waterloo. The original 2026 capital budget had 173 projects for a total value of $111 million. This has been revised to 201 projects with a value of $168 million. Adjustments to the capital budget are being made due to shifts in timing, with some projects being deferred to 2026, and other updates as part of the development charge bylaw update, which is ongoing. In 2025, 122 projects were funded, totaling $81 million. Some major capital projects that were started in 2025 include the Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive reconstruction, the Albert Street water main replacement and road and drainage improvements, and Albert McCormick Community Center expansion and renovation Phase A. Looking ahead to 2026, a few other capital examples include Indigenous gathering space, Northdale Park, green building policy implementation, Union Street reconstruction, and digital service implementation. As outlined in section 1.5 of the report, there were significant pressures on the 2026 budget due to committed operational obligations and organizational review committed staff additions. With the goal of maintaining a balanced budget at the previously approved property tax rate and to avoid deferring committed costs to the next council, staff has prepared this net zero that's before you. The net zero adjustments that are recommended in the staff report begin on recommendation 2A through to recommendation 2M and are summarized in table 4 of the report. Table 4 can be found in your packet starting on page 286. Each adjustment is accompanied by an overview, and that is cross-referenced on the table with the note reference. I'm not going to go through each one in detail, but I'd be happy to take any questions after the presentation. But I would just like to highlight for council that as previously directed as part of the original 3-year budget approval, the removal of 1 FTE and the efficiency target of 100,000 have been achieved and are included in this net zero amendment. For budget purposes, the city forecasts annual growth of approximately 1% and then adjusts based on higher levels of growth if achieved. As shown on the slide and in chart 2, which is on the report in page 285 of the packet, the city is seeing growth ranging between 1% and 3.89% over the past 15 years, and at no point has growth been lower than 1% over this time frame prior to 2025. However, for 2025, our projected assessment growth is likely to fall short of target by an estimated 823,000, representing growth of 0.25%. As the report outlines, there's various factors that have led to this low growth rate in 2025, including but not limited to higher interest rates, land values, material cost, availability of skilled labor, supply chain, and tariffs. While the majority of these factors are not within the control of the city or the direct control of the city, we are doing what we can to accelerate approvals, and 4,200 units have been approved and are ready to proceed to building permit today once the market conditions improve. So that does provide some positive outlook for 2026 forward, and there are some positive signals, including the Bank of Canada lowering key interest rates. Staff will continue to monitor and adjust this target as part of future budgets. But in accordance with our multi-year budget policy FC 011, staff are recommending that the assessment growth shortfall of $823,000 be funded from the tax rate stabilization reserve on a one-time basis. The balance in the tax rate stabilization reserve is $4.4 million. As noted in the introductory comments, the City of Waterloo is a service provider. We require 850 full-time equivalent employees to provide critical services that residents depend on every day. Without these staff resources, these services and these service levels are not possible. As part of the original 2026 budget approved by Council, staff resources and strategic areas were approved, including the continued fire master plan phase-in with 8 additional firefighters added for 2026, bringing the 24 to 26 total to 20 firefighters to provide expanded fire service in our growing and changing city, including on the west side. An additional transportation engineer supervisor was added to support road safety, traffic operations, and the crossing guard program, and a ready project lead to support the implementation of the Get Ready plan. As outlined in section 1.6.1 of the report, staff are recommending the addition of a full-time manager of development planning to support the transition of regional planning responsibilities to the city and increase service demand. And as per section 1.6.2, the addition of a full-time assistant city solicitor to support the transition of regional planning responsibilities to the city and handle the growing volume of development files and complex planning responsibility. The approval of these 2 full-time staff resources will have no additional impact on the tax base for 2026, as these positions have been factored into the recommended 2026 net zero amendment. Finally, as presented as part of section 3.1, staff are recommending the introduction of a climate-wise budget assessment pilot for the 2027 one-year and 2028 to 2033 year budget processes. This tool will report capital projects and operating requests as climate beneficial or climate priority as an additional resource to help council make informed climate-related budget decisions. That concludes the 2026 budget confirmation overview presentation, and staff are now available to take any questions council may have. And it looks like I'm just a few seconds over. Thank you.
I would call that right on time, my friend. So council, the budget confirmation is open for questions, and I'm looking for questions of staff. Yep.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the report and the work that staff have done to make some adjustments within our budget, the savings that we have achieved, and looking at a net zero adjustment for our budget for this year, for the tax increase for this year. I do have a question though, with the new staff, the manager development and the city solicitor, Brad, you mentioned this year that it's not an increase to the tax rate. Is that true ongoing?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Hanmer, the addition of those 2 staff and all other staff, there would be no increased impact for 2026 as we factored it into the net zero amendment. However, in the future, as those positions, like any other positions, receive adjustments for cost of living or adjustments for benefits, there would inherently be a property tax impact to those. That would be built into the budget as appropriated in the future. But I wouldn't be able to say to you today that there is no future increase from those positions. Like any other position, there's ongoing costs in the future.
That go forward. Thank you for that. That's what I was looking for that. I figured the ongoing would be there, but just not the full salary going forward. Okay, thank you.
Other questions, council? Mayor McCabe, did you have questions? Sorry, I couldn't. Councillor Roach, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Brad. I'm just wondering, with our engagement survey, the dominant theme from the engagement survey was that tax increases unaffordable, especially for fixed income residents, renters, seniors, and small businesses. And I just want to know, like, what specific changes were made to 2026 numbers in direct response to that feedback? What items were reduced or deferred or removed because of the affordability concerns?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Roach, thank you for your question. I would say, in response to those affordability concerns, which we certainly appreciate, staff's goal was to minimize all of those pressures that have arisen since the original approval, to maintain the previously approved 6.4 property tax increase, so we weren't increasing that burden any further. The affordability obviously is a big piece and something we're mindful of, but at the same time, we are looking to invest in those services that we heard through the strategic plan that we need to invest in, including fire service expansion, winter sidewalk, snow clearing, and so it is a balance, and that proposed net zero maintains all of the investments that council had previously supported. If the goal is to look for ways to reduce that, we likely need to look at some of those service level increases, not proceeding at this time.
Right. Just as a follow-up, through you, Chair, service level changes portion is obviously the most discretionary piece of the increase. So, like the original 2024-2026 budget identified about $1.6 million in efficiencies, and I think a further $2.4 million in reductions, like over 4% of the tax rate. So I'm just wondering how much of that total has actually been implemented, and how much remains unused for 2026?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Roach. So the accumulative total that was shared earlier is about $5.2 million, with 2.5 of that subject to council consideration as part of the amended net zero. The future availability of increased efficiencies and adjustments is always subject to review. Staff review that with each budget cycle, looking for areas where we can implement efficiencies and or revenue opportunities to help mitigate the property tax impact. And so we would be committed to do that with the 2027 budget and future budgets 2028, 2030. It's a continual process, but I would say the $2.5 million that is before you today, we are being fairly aggressive with some of these adjustments, really with that goal of maintaining that 6.4% and not seeing that increase further.
Okay, and I just have one more, possibly two more questions. I would defer to the other councillors if they want to go. Just jumping back then, Brad, to, oh, sorry?
I'd rather you just go ahead.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Just jumping back then to the service level, like about almost 2% of the increase for 2026 are tied to the service levels, just jumping back there. Residents have said, they're really worried about spending on non-core issues and causes. Do we break the service levels like into different levels, like strongly recommended or the safety critical, discretionary, with regard to the service level? Just basically essential versus deferrable. Do we break that out?
Through Chair Freeman and Councillor Roach, the service level increases would all be for core services that we're required to implement. And whether they would be considered discretionary is a difficult one to define. So I think the best example is fire services expansion. Obviously, we're required to provide fire services, and we were collectively aware that adding 24 firefighters and some additional staff is a large impact. And so what we did with that service level increase is we tried to phase it in as best we could in a responsible manner. And so we developed the plan that's seen, I'll focus on the firefighter piece, 4 firefighters added in year 1, 8 in year 2, and then a further 8 to come forward in year 3. And that's strategic in terms of when the new infrastructure, the trucks will be coming online, and when, you know, it makes sense from an operational perspective to kind of stage that implementation. And I'm sure Councillor Van Utegem can expand if needed. But we have tried to, you know, phase these increases where we can. But at the end of the day, these are service level increases that are required, and I would not view them as discretionary. Similarly, on the sidewalk enhancements, that's another piece that we are looking at. That's something we heard through the strategic plan, that the community is looking for us to improve the accessibility of our sidewalks, and that's another piece of that puzzle. You know, having the residents, you know, clear the sidewalks to a greater degree has also been part of the strategy, but it's been less effective. So I think, you know, in staff and council's view, it seemed to be a service that we need to increase our support of. So whether or not that's viewed as discretionary or not, I think is a difficult one to answer, but a service that we've deemed necessary. Thank you.
I just have one more question, Brad. You know, my constituents find, you know, 6.4 or, you know, well over 6%, you know, difficult. And I'm more of a moderate. I'm not a slash and burn kind of guy, but has staff modeled a scenario that caps an increase at 2026 at like 5%, maybe by phasing enhancements for 27, 28? Have they modeled any kind of thing, you know, in the 5% range?
Through Councillor Freeman, at this point in time, we haven't necessarily modeled that scenario. Staff would need some time to take that away, but we would be, you know, roughly looking at about 1.5 million-ish of additional savings, offsets, deferral of service level increases to achieve that figure of about 5%.
Thank you, Brad.
Other questions? Councillor Rowe?
I just wanted to follow up on what Councillor Roach was saying. Brad, is that something that can be taken away, like for 2027, for example, and look at potential savings that way?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Rowe, I would say for the 2027 budget, that will be our first one-year budget with the next council. So while we be before this council in June looking for a little bit of guidance on the strategy, it will be potentially a different council that we are embarking on that journey with, and so we'll be seeking guidance for that budget. As part of the process, we'll be looking for additional efficiencies, opportunities to manage that. We'll also be looking for some guidance on a bit of a goal or a target property tax increase. This 3-year budget has seen some significant issues to address, in particular the expansion of fire. And there are, you know, just to be very forthcoming, there are other pressures that are pending for the 2027 budget. And so we're going to have to work through that together and come to a consensus on what's reasonable. And we may have to make some difficult decisions on things that need to wait and that we aren't able to implement at this time. But the short answer is every budget process we're looking at efficiencies, opportunities as best we can to manage the property tax increase.
Thank you so much.
Other questions, Council? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. You know, I think one of the many things that staff took away in this 3-year budget to try to figure out was creative ways of finding the reductions. And one of the ones that I want to ask about and clarify is the inflationary contribution menu item, which was M33. So this is the reduction approved related to the funding of the Capital Reserve Fund. And it's a phased reduction. So in 2026, the total ongoing reduction of $150,000 there. And what I'm trying to understand is what inflationary figure it's tied to. Is it related to the non-residential construction, so that 5-year average, or is it closer related to the CPIX?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Wright, So the inflationary factor that we use for the capital budget and any contribution to a city capital reserve, including the capital reserve fund, is the construction price index, GTA. We do currently have a policy that bases that on the 5-year rolling average of that index to try to smooth it out to some degree. And as part of this council, we did make a policy change to cap any annual increase at 10%, as we did see some outlier spikes. I don't have the years before me, Michael might, but in 2022 and at the height of COVID, we have already begun some preliminary discussions where we have seen that inflationary factor declining now to 4% and change. And so we're likely to come back to council with some recommendations on maybe a further policy change here, where we look at maybe a 3-year average, maybe we look at a different cap that's lower than 10%. As if we have made the contributions and we're starting to see tenders come in and it's more around 4%, maybe there's some adjustments we can make for future budgets. In regards to the reduction, I think what I'll just note is we made a reduction to the contribution to the capital reserve fund as part of budget, with direction for staff and corporate management team to go away and then make some adjustments to projects. So in that case, we cut the contributions and we said, make the project cuts later. And so we've done that and reported back in this report. But we are already thinking there's maybe some further opportunities to revisit that policy for the 27 budget, in which case what we're inflating our climate action reserve fund and our capital reserve fund and our capital infrastructure reinvestment reserve fund in accordance with policy might be a lower base level inflator. So something that we're definitely taking away for the next budget.
Thanks for that. And just noting that when we don't keep up with inflation, we actually are defunding. So, and these are capital reserves. So just flagging that for anyone who's listening. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions? Mayor McCabe.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks again for this information. I'm just curious, because you mentioned about some of the other cost pressures for 2027. Could you just give us more good news there on that front, or what we're looking at beyond this budget?
Through Chair Freeman to the mayor, yeah, I would say some that come to mind. We are currently looking at, or staff and council have been looking at, a 1% infrastructure increase year over year. Cassandra Pacey earlier noted that, to make significant and more inroads on reducing that gap, we probably need to look at 2.5 to 2 to 2.5% year over year. So that would be a pressure that comes to mind, where we'll have to manage, how much can we increase that by, how much additional work can we take on, can the industry respond to? So there's a balance there, but increased infrastructure funding. We have the remaining phase-in of the fire master plan, which we're talking about today, but the plan that was developed, we are adding 20 firefighters this 3-year budget, and there's an additional 4 to kind of round out that plan. That would be referred to the 2027 budget. So that'll be another piece to work through. We have ongoing investment in climate action that comes to mind. So there's no shortage of pressures that we're going to need to work through. In addition, we have been trying to manage staff increases. So as we can appreciate within this 3-year budget, there have been significant investment in needed staff resources. And at the same time, we have been bringing on some staff on contract to kind of help where needed. And so some of those contracts may need to be considered for conversion to permanent. So that would be some of the top pressures that we'll need to work through in 27 and more likely into 28 to 30 as well.
Okay, thanks very much. Like I said, more good news for us. I'm also just curious, we've had a back and forth over the weekend, thank you, and in some other discussions about the tax rate stabilization. Because, understanding that affordability is a real challenge for people, and trying to really find where we could reduce the rate if possible. I was asking you about the potential to use more from tax rate stabilization. And you gave me some really important and, you know, good information about what you would recommend. I'm just curious if you could share that with the rest of council.
Certainly, through Chair Freeman to the mayor. So as would have been outlined in Julie's reserve and reserve fund report, the current projected ending balance will be 4.4 million in the tax rate stabilization reserve. We have different kind of levels within the tax rate stabilization. We have a 1% minimum, so 1% of our property tax levy. We don't want to be below that. That would be a very minimal level of flexibility and financial contingency. Our target is 3%, and then we have a maximum of 5%. So right now we're kind of in that range of the 3% target, trending towards 5%. But as we can appreciate, you know, $4.4 million in the grand scheme of things isn't you know, a lot of money to the context of the municipality and the size of our operating and capital budget, and that is our contingency reserve. And so the issue with, you know, looking at drawing on the tax rate stabilization reserve on a, you know, in 2026 on a one-time basis to reduce the levy, but at the same time making all of the commitments and increased investments is what we are doing as we're reducing taxes today through tax rate stabilization, but we're deferring that property tax impact to the next term of council. And so that is what staff was looking to avoid through the recommended net zero, to, you know, net it out today to ensure that we're not deferring those pressures. But if we're looking at, you know, an ongoing commitment with a one-time funding source, that's where that pressure will be, need to be resolved then in the future budget in 2027.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I was hoping that might be a way to help with some of this, but because certainly, as Councillor Roach mentioned, you know, it's not just Ward 3. There's people across the whole city who, you know, like there's pressures on people and affordability challenges in a variety of, across every ward, right? It's across the whole city and certainly well beyond Waterloo. But just, if I may, just a couple of quick things just to respond to Councillor Roach around like some of the things that we're doing. You know, there has been, we've done things like facility rental discounts, right? We put 2.5 million into that so that different groups can, you know, have a reduction in the rate of facility rentals. And I know a lot of local groups, neighborhood groups, et cetera, really appreciate that. We've increased the amount that we've put towards fee assistance for people to access our recreation programs. You know, we've of course put about no more than that, about 1.7 million into our arts and creative industries, and who, you know, they do all kinds of amazing events and activities, and the BIA does, you know, from Lumen to Buskers to the Button Factory, et cetera. So, and through our neighborhood programs, I mean, there's ways that we work with people in the local community to try and offer a variety of events and activities at generally low to no cost. So just wanted to share a few of those examples as well. But my last question, just to pivot back to Mr. Witzel, is can you, looking forward a little bit more, can you just outline again the continued budget pressures we have with the RIM Park payment, and where we are with that repayment schedule, and when we can look to not have that on our shoulders anymore?
Through Chair Freeman to the mayor, so the RIM Park financial obligation has reduced the city's financial flexibility, obviously as part of, you know, past budgets and this budget. But we are fully on track to have that obligation paid in full and retired by 2031. The obligation is funded through a combination of an ongoing base contribution from the operating budget, as well as a contribution from the RIM Park Reinvestment Reserve. So the reserve was created with the redemption of a promissory note that was owed to the city from Waterloo North Hydro, so now Nova. So we invested $15 million back in 2026 to kind of help fund this. But what's in the base budget is approximately $4 million. So in 2031, when we're doing that budget, so that will be our not the next 1 year budget, we have a 1 year and then a 3, but our 1 year budget following that. So in that budget in 2031, we will have ongoing availability of $4 million approximately for the council of that day to decide how we want to go about reinvesting that base level budget once that obligation is paid in full.
Thanks for that. It's, I think it's just a good reminder for us and whomever's listening to know that we still, I think provide, we do a lot at the city. There's over 100 services that we provide. Again, we've heard about water and there's like new investments in parks and, I mean, the list goes on. But, and we do that despite the fact that we have this annual significant RIM Park payment that we need to grapple with every year. So good to see that we can look ahead in a few short years and that will be resolved. So thanks for that. Just one quick question. Sorry, if that's okay, Chair. Sorry, one quick question. We continue to also support, with $54,000 the museum. And I would note that Kitchener doesn't reciprocate by supporting the Clay and Glass Gallery. But I'm just curious because my understanding was that usually when an organization has a deficit that we require a deficit mitigation plan. Have we gotten anything like that from the museum over the past? Because this is, I think, my understanding is I mean they're going through some restructuring, but we haven't had an update as far as I'm aware. Is that correct? Oh, good question for Estero. Thank you.
So through you, Chair, to the Mayor, we were part of intermunicipal group a few years ago that developed a 3-year funding plan with the museum that required them to provide some of that information. That information was not entirely provided, and since then there have been additional funding challenges raised by the museum. We have just received an annual update, a budget update as part of our KCI program, so I can share that information with council. But to date, there isn't a comprehensive deficit reduction strategy.
Okay, thank you. I think that information would be really helpful. Can you even give us a ballpark for today of where they're at with their deficit reduction?
I can certainly provide that to council, but I don't have that right at hand.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Estero.
Thank you. Councillor Bassick? No? Okay. All right, well, council, we have a series of motions here on the recommendation list. And I wanted to get your advice. Am I seeking a mover for everything together? Do we want to take them separate? Councillor Wright, sorry.
I do have a friendly amendment to include an additional recommendation. So maybe we do want to take them separately.
Okay.
Or
And so
group
we'll
them.
do that as item 10? Is that your suggestion?
Yeah.
To add it as item 10 for council's consideration? Yeah. Did you want to introduce that then?
Yes, I can. Thank you. So the recommendation that I am proposing is that council direct staff to establish an Arts and Creative Industries Reserve Fund to report back in June 2026 with a policy for council consideration, and that an additional contribution be considered as part of the 2025 year-end surplus deficit allocation report that would be brought forward by staff in May 2026. And the purpose of this recommendation is to offer the city a flexible way to be competitive and opportunity ready for the arts and creative industry sector. What we saw in our community conversations that are in our package, reflected from throughout the strat plan even, is the acknowledgement of the role of arts and creative industries in local talent retention, and that there is overall a strong desire for arts programming. And so one of the things that I just want to highlight is that as we moved out of the COVID impacts, there were both COVID impacts and inflationary impacts in this term of council, where we committed considerable amount of one-time funding. And we don't have a policy or a mechanism to deal with that at this point. We're doing it in a very ad hoc way. And yet we know that there will be continued headwinds for arts and creative industries. We've seen that with even our own Lumen event, where it requires, there's been a significant headwinds in terms of even achieving corporate sponsorships. And we've seen that across the arts. It's a really big issue. We also know federally that we are a little bit of a funding desert for arts and cultural programs. And increasingly grants are requiring 50% matching funds. So this is another opportunity for us to smooth that out by making small pragmatic investments now that would be interest bearing, and we would then be able to smooth out our approach and be proactive and really take advantage of opportunities as they arise.
Okay, thank you. So nothing's been moved right now. So is there, do we want to move and second these, and then maybe we take them individually? And then if people want to comment on the individual pieces, we can probably facilitate that if that works. So is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. Okay, so item 1 is that council approved report Corp 2025-042. Is there any comment on that? All in favor? That's carried unanimous. Sorry, it's carried. And those opposed? Councillor Roach. Thank you. Item 2. There's a series of items here. Do we want to take them separately, or can we take this as one motion? One motion? Okay. All those in favor of item 2? And those opposed? Councillor Roach. Item 3. This is the additional FTE to support planning and support to regional planning responsibilities. All those in, any comments? Sorry. All those in favor? Those opposed? Council, you're in favor of that one? Yeah, that's carried unanimously. Item 4. All those in favor? That's unanimous, carried. Item 5. All those in favor? That's carried. Those opposed? Councillor Roach. One-time funding for tax rate stabilization to deal with the assessment shortfall. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Item 7. Any questions? All those in favor? Those contrary? Councillor Roach is against. That's carried. And item 8, the reaffirmation. All those in favor? Those opposed? Councillor Roach is opposed. And item 9, climate-wise budget assessment pilot. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And now we're on to item 10. Since this is a new item, I did want to see if there's any conversation on this piece. Did anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Rowe?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I did want to speak to this piece. I understand and appreciate Councillor Wright's proposal for arts funding. I know that there are challenges out there. I do have concerns. For me, I believe there's conversations that need to be had. I've certainly, and we are familiar, I'm sure, around the table, I've had questions about equity and access. And I'm considering the lens that we're looking through in that making new decisions. I'm not speaking very well, but I would like to have a review and understand a couple of things first before I would vote in favor. One would be the arts plan. I'd like to have, and there are forthcoming conversations about funding gaps for cultural and community groups. So I think for me, it's about intentionality, about having those conversations, understanding the policies, the criteria, those pieces, and really getting a firm hold on what gaps may be open and that we know, that we know are open for some community members that don't have access. So I'd like to have those conversations first before I commit to a reserve fund.
Thank you. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you. Through you, in response to Councillor Rowe's comments, one of the things I liked about the motion that's put forward is that it's establishing the fund, and it would have to have criteria that go along with it. So to me, many of the things that you raised would have to be considerations in the policy. So I'm okay with us being able to create the policy. My bigger concern was, are we going to be in a position that we've actually got surpluses that we can put into it for this year? But for all the reasons that you've just spoken about, I think having the policy gives us that opportunity to address the gaps in a more consistent way than we have. And I would hope, as staff are developing the criteria for the policy, they'd have all the consultation and the discussions that we need to have happen. Thank you.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. I guess I'm curious about the order here, like, because in my mind, I feel like we need to have the arts and creative industries plan, and I know there's a large event strategy plan that I'm not sure when we're getting that, but that's being worked on right now. There's a culture plan, which we know, I guess you could say expired or ran out, and it was a 10-year plan that I'm not sure where that sits right now. So like, I would prefer to understand where, like, get an update on where all of those are, and then have staff, as part of that, come back and report or provide like an update on, you know, potential policies and would they recommend a reserve. I just feel like starting with the reserve is sort of like that might be the goal to end with, not to start with, but like we should start with a more comprehensive discussion of the plans that we're waiting for, where that puts us, policy that would then go around that, and then if there's a recommendation to put a reserve in place. So I don't know if you would be open to amending this to capture that, but that's where my head's at with this.
Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. I'm happy to support it as is. I think, for me, when I saw this come through, and I appreciate Councillor Wright bringing this forward, it harkens back to what we did in my first term of council when we created the Climate Action Reserve Fund. So we had in my first term of council, we had sort of signaled to the community, to staff, that climate action was a priority, but we were often sort of, how do we find the money to deal with this thing that council has signaled as a priority? And this is something that the city has direct authority over, much like the Climate Action Reserve Fund. Arts and Creative Industries is clearly within the jurisdiction of the city of Waterloo. As Councillor Wright alluded to, it's something that the community has been telling us we need to be supporting. And I think the creation of a reserve fund really, as was done with the CARF, it sort of moves away from having an ad hoc approach to having transparent, equitable, and stable funding source. It's transparent because it's going to be reported on annually through the reserve update that we received earlier today. The community will see what funding is and isn't available and for what. It's equitable because it ensures that instead of funding sort of over-indexing towards those that know how to navigate the system, meet some non-policy rubric, fall to the whims of council and staff, that we will be able to create the policy. It'll be a policy-driven approach at council controls, and we can tweak, just like we did with CARF earlier today. We tweak that to make sure that it is meeting our strategic priorities, be that ready priorities or any other priority that this council or future council has. and it's stable. And for me, this is the key, because we've heard this from the arts community repeatedly, and too often the arts community is the first to be looked at to be defunded. And so creating this reserve fund signals that this is an ongoing priority to the community at large. And so I'm happy to support it as it is, and I appreciate Councillor Wright bringing it forward.
Councillor Vassic.
Thanks through you, Chair Freeman. I wanted to, well, thanks, Councillor Wright, for bringing this forward. And I wanted to thank staff as well. In our last budget cycle, we asked you to look into and come back with some options. And so I know you've been working with Councillor Wright on this since then, and staff internally since then. So we've asked you to do something, and you've done something. So thank you so much. And now it's up to us to debate and discuss it. I'm going to have a question at this, but I also just want to signal that I feel ready to support this today. I think it's the right time, and the reason for that is it's a signal to the community. Right now, what we're being asked to do is a placeholder to say, community, we really care about arts and creative industries, but we don't have a policy yet, and we don't have a framework, but we really want to move in that direction. We want to provide equitable funding, like a few of you have said, not ad hoc funding to a historically underfunded and defunded sector. I was thinking back to today, to when I was in elementary school and hearing about all the cuts, like Mike Harris cuts to arts and culture, and there was outrage about that. But we're not catching. We haven't caught up. And so what we're saying is, oh my gosh, as a council, we really recognize that we should catch up. And that's a beautiful thing to communicate to the sector here. And I think in terms of equity, 72.7% of artists surveyed through the Uncovering Barriers report, which is the identifying gaps and opportunities and resources causing barriers for artists and the region from 2024, one or more hold marginalized identities. So it's also signaling to artists who are marginalized that this is something that's important to us. You matter to us, and that's in addition to how it supports talent attraction and retention, supports the efforts of the Uptown Waterloo BIA, which we all value very much. And so what my sense is, and I'd like Brad to maybe speak to this, which is this is the right process. It feels like it to me, but I'd like staff to actually be able to speak to that. And I think what this lets us do is signal, and then it gives us the opportunity to do the policy right and to do the funding right and to say, we're saying to staff, we have two teams that really matter to us here, the READY team and the Arts and Creative Industries team. They're two highly underfunded teams at the city and within society broadly. And what we want to do is bring them together for the benefit of the city as an organization, for the city and as just Waterloo, and for the broader region. And so we're signaling that to staff today to say that these two teams are highly important to us, and we really want them to work together to make sure that this policy framework comes back to us in a way that we feel comfortable moving forward. And so in addition to those equity considerations and the arts and creative industries one, it's just smart financial management in addition to our long-term financial plans. This is not going to have a tax-based impact at the next budget cycle. You're not going to see a menu item for this. This is coming through just prudent financial management. And so I guess that's my perspective on it. And then Brad, I wanted to ask, based on the mayor's question about feeling like this is sort of out of order. Can you speak to that? Is this sort of uncharacteristic of a reserve fund coming forward, or is this, even if it is this okay to do it like this, or are we out to lunch?
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Vassic, I would say we've done it in both orders. So we've established a reserve and then come back with the policy, or we've come together with the policy and established a reserve. Either can work. I think that the main point that I would make is if council elects to establish the reserve today, the reserve fund, and we have the availability of a surplus in May, and we want to allocate a portion, I think I would stress, we'll kind of have a recommendation on what percentage might go here. And then the policy comes in June that establishes how that reserve would be spent. no funding would be approved to be spent from this reserve without council approval, and that would be either through the next budget cycle in 2027, or if there was a need earlier through a council report. So even if we were to establish a reserve and we're able to provide some initial funding, council still has that authority as to how we would then go about investing it. So we've done it in both order, I guess is the short answer here. And I think a bit of the motion is around when will the surplus come forward, and then how quick could council or could staff come back to council with the actual policy. If the policy could be accelerated by a month and come in May, then they could come together, but it's just trying to provide appropriate time to come back with that fulsome policy. So in the example of the Reconciliation Action Partnership, maybe I would just use that one, where we established the reserve and the policy came today, but the reserve has already been established because we knew it needed to be established and to manage those funds. So it would be not unprecedented to do it in this order, but it's also not unprecedented to do it in the other order as well.
Okay, thanks. That gives me some sense of that it's flexible. So I'm gonna say one other thing, and then otherwise I think the council knows my stance. It doesn't seem clear that we're going to support this, though when I saw this come through, I thought, wow, this is an easy ask. Really smart way to do it. But I just want to really stress to the CMT and to finance and to arts and creative industries, economic development, and the READY team that I think if this were to pass today, I just want to ensure that staff are hearing us loud and clear that what we really want is to make sure that an equity lens is applied to the development of this policy framework. And so staff can expect that if a policy were to come back, that those questions will be come forward, and we'll want to know what that process was like.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. I actually see Divya Handa is here, and I was just curious about your input. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Divya, but I wondered if you have any input. I hear what my fellow councillors are saying, and I really respect their perspectives. I think mine is a little bit different. I am the council liaison to READY, and I also advocacy in the community. I do see it a little bit differently, so I'm wondering if you have anything that you can add about, like my perspective is a lens, right? Like what we consider before or after, or where, and this may not be the right way to say it, but sometimes I feel like I add equity in as opposed to leading with equity. So I was just wondering if you have any comments on that.
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe, so it's hard for me to speak to this because the READY team really hasn't had a chance to have a conversation with the arts and creative industries team about this. I think in terms of being able to build a policy, just from purely a READY perspective, in order to be able to build READY into it with true consultation and engagement along the entire READY lens. So if I think about accessibility, equity, and reconciliation, that timeline is likely not feasible to me, but perhaps there are already plans that have been made that consider that. And I think the other piece of that is that without recognizing perhaps where culture maybe has gaps in the way that the traditional culture plan was written, and without thinking about how to move it forward, without having had those conversations with all those teams coming together to think about how we would move the next culture plan or the next iteration of it forward, we aren't entirely sure what gaps it is at the moment that we're trying to close between all of our different funds. And so again, I think actually exploring that to understand what that would look like in a policy structure, and therefore then maybe what the reserve fund would be able or would be responsible for covering, I think will also take longer than the timeline here. But again, perhaps the arts and creative industries team has already pre-planned for that. Does that address the question?
I think so, but I think some of my other councillors may have questions.
Okay, so Counselor Bassick, and then I know that the mayor has questions too.
Thanks through you, Chair Freeman. I just want to highlight that this is a council-directed motion. Councillor Wright is putting this forward, and there was no opportunity. This wasn't a direction to have Ready Team or Arts and Creative Industries team provide input into this. So my understanding is that you didn't seek that out. So I just want to make sure that we know that this wasn't input. I think input wasn't solicited from those teams for this financial report. So I just want to make sure that that's also, this is a council-directed motion. This isn't a staff motion to have been consulted with everybody. But I understand you're on the spot. So I just wanted to make sure that we know that this is coming from the top down, and there was no, of course there was, staff worked on this. Brad is clearly, everyone understands. You look confused about why I'm saying this, but I just want to make sure that staff feel as though this is not on them. Any of the teams feel this isn't on them, but this is a council-directed motion, and for our consideration here. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, this was directly in response to having the right financial mechanisms and having good governance, and that's really where it came from. And it did come from council entirely. It was me sending it.
Mayor McCabe, I know that you wanted to consider a friendly amendment. If I could just, I had a few comments, and then we can consider your amendment and whether or not it's deemed to be friendly or whether it needs to be voted on. I guess for me, I'm kind of struggling with this piece. I hear what you're saying, that it's all come from council, but then at the same time, I'm receiving emails from people who aren't council telling me to support this. So I'm struggling a bit with that. It feels like there was some consultation that happened somewhere, because I'm getting emails telling me to vote for this. And I feel like we're being offered a solution to something that is not fully understood, because we've been asking for the culture plan now for almost 2 years. I don't understand why we haven't seen it, and it's a tremendous frustration. There are other funds that we have, like the Economic Development Fund, the General Operation Fund, that we could essentially modify the policy to achieve the same outcome, such that it was very directive to say that if opportunities, for example, for fund matching associated with arts and creative industries, that this fund could be used to do that. I'm really concerned about taking on more funding of things because higher levels of government have failed to do so. So it was a good example to say how arts and creative industries have been defunded through the education system, because that's true. And the Arts Council of Ontario has defunded a lot of things. The National Arts Council has defunded things. And I just don't know how much is the right balance for the city of Waterloo to carry in terms of resourcing, because every reserve fund, even if you take the money from surplus allocation, that same money, if it was put to CURF, for example, would be allocated to offsetting something that would be a tax-based something that we had to pay for. So in essence, we're still using it to offset tax-based changes. And I'm really worried about a conversation about core services, and we heard loud and clear on this budget work that the tax increase that we're looking at right now is too much. And within that, there's 1.7 million that we allocate to arts and creative industries currently. And I'm worried that people are gonna say we're already doing too much, but we don't know whether we're doing too much. We don't know where we fit in terms of like what our per capita spending, for example, is on arts and creative industries and how that compares to municipalities of a similar size. And I feel like we need to know those numbers. I feel, and so like, I'm not contrary to doing the policy work. I just don't want to say we're going to do this. I'd rather see the policy. I'd rather see how that balances within the other reserve funds, whether there's other tools within the reserve funds that we currently have to make this happen. And whether there's other funding sources. For example, the municipal accommodation tax. Like, is there a different funding source than what's being suggested? So I kind of feel like there's a lot of proposed solutions in this, but I'd like to fully understand the what we're trying to achieve, and then let staff identify all the different tools that we could use to achieve that. And I really, really want to know where we fit from a comparative perspective really badly, because I'm struggling so much with this. So.
If I may respond directly to that. So part of this is based on the very good work that Mike Morris did when he was MP for Kitchener Centre. And he did identify that across our region, arts only receive $3.39 per person compared to the large cities, which are in the zone of $18.30 per person. So there has been a series of benchmarking exercises that have taken place over time to compare cities. But you're right, that is policy work, but that is policy work that Mike has actually already undertaken and is public. So I just want to bookmark that one there. And secondly, I just want to go back to the difference between operationalizing arts funding and having a financial mechanism that allows us to be opportunity ready. Like, these are two different things in a sense, because the questions that have emerged about the arts and culture plan and how we approach arts funding from the tax base, that's going to continue to move forward. I guess the consideration I have here is that there are still a number of headwinds that the sector is facing, and we stepped in to do additional funding. And that's something that we may need to continue to do from time to time because of those continuing headwinds, because of reduced uncertainty in the corporate sector, because of the ongoing audience building and the changing operational models that organizations are facing. And so really it's, the whole reason I brought this forward was so that we could explore something that is highly strategic and focused on being opportunity ready. So it's the idea of creating a mechanism for flexibility at a time when, as a municipality, we're constantly having to do micro adjustments in order to achieve the goals that our residents are asking us to achieve. And this was one way of doing that.
I appreciate that, thank you. Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion and the sort of purpose behind this. I had proposed an alternate motion, an amended motion, I should say, sorry. Thanks, Natalia. So I'll look to the mover, Councillor Wright, to see if you think this is friendly or not.
I think it's sufficiently friendly.
Okay, so then I'll put this on the floor for consideration.
I'm trying to remember who the seconder of this was.
Oh, I just wrote it, so I don't
No,
have it.
I mean, the mover has said she sees it as friendly.
Oh,
I
I
just
think
need to make sure
Councillor
it was
Bassick, wasn't
Councillor Hanmer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I too agree, it's a friendly amendment,
Okay.
and I appreciate the wording.
Okay, so we don't have to vote on the amendment. So the question becomes, is there more conversation that we would like to have on this item, or are we ready to vote? Councillor Bassick?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'd just like to say, this is fine, and I'm glad that Julie thinks it's a friendly amendment. And I'm not going to be unfriendly about this. I think it's entirely unnecessary. I think that we have shown the arts and creative industries team or sector that we like them. They're nice, they're important. And sometimes we buy stuff for ourselves or our families to put in our houses, or we go to the symphony, or we do other arts and creative industries team. I don't know what we're trying to do with number 11 exactly, other than delay what I think we should do in the future anyways. And so I'm ready to support it today. And staff have clarified that this is it's not an uncommon way to do, to start a reserve fund. And they know that we want to consult with all teams at the city to develop the policy framework. And quite honestly, I keep hearing council ask staff, what about this? What about this? We need more information, we need more information. But we aren't asking all staff this. We're asking arts and creative industries staff, we need more information, we need more information. And then they give us the information, and this council keeps saying, but we don't have that information, but we just got the answer. So I watch in confusion when they tell us what they've been granting for, or when they provide definitions for us at council, but we're still not satisfied, and so it just doesn't seem to jive with me. I think we're receiving the answers, and I think we're receiving the information, and I've never been more dismayed around this council table than I have been with arts and creative industries. And so I think the original motion is sound. I think it aligns with city processes, and I think it signals to the community arts and creative industries matter to us, and through the discussion, staff in the community are aware of what our concerns are. Do we have enough money? Are we going to consult with all the teams? Are we going to be the kind of organizational leaders that bring teams together in order to work together to manage and drive community priorities? And so I think that the first motion, Julie, I think your motion says that to the community, and I'm willing to take that kind of firmness on it. I'm not going to support this motion. I'll vote against it, and if the opportunity comes back to vote on the first motion, I am thrilled, beyond thrilled, to vote for that pragmatic, strategic, and value-based motion.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused about what we're looking at right here, because this is not what I thought I saw previously with the red. So I want to make sure I understand what this is. I thought that all we were doing was adding in the red.
No, that's not.
We're adding in everything. Okay, I'm going to go back and ask the mover and the seconder whether they see this as friendly, because this is substantially more, I did not understand that this was all of the language different. Why is the red stuff not, like, why is everything not red? Because aren't you adding all the red? Aren't you adding all that language?
Yes, from that council direct staff to provide reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But okay. So I'm going to ask the mover, do you see this as friendly?
No, it has substantially changed now.
Okay. And the seconder?
I would agree. I was only looking at the red part.
Okay.
before.
All right. So that being said, we are going to take the red part as a separate amendment, and we'll vote on that amendment to see whether it gets added to the original motion. Okay? All right. So
And
those.
Are you getting a seconder and then I can speak to it?
Is there a seconder of this item 11?
Just to
this
get it on the
amendment. It's seconded by Councillor Roach. Just discussion on this amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide a bit more of my reason behind this, because I hear what you're saying, what you were saying, Councillor Bassick, but I don't feel we haven't had an update on the large event strategy. That's a process that's still in place. The last meeting that I think Councillor Wright and I had on that was September 2024, mid-September 2024. So that's a year and a half ago. And I'm really curious about what's going to be needed through that process, because my understanding is it is going to impact like parks. Are we going to, because there's no hydro, for example, in Waterloo Park, and are we considering other, what are we going to consider sort of writ large with that strategy? So we haven't had that. I mean, that's information that I think is really valuable before we would move to establish a reserve fund. Similarly, the culture plan, we don't have that in place right now. There was a 10-year plan in place that expired. It's got to be at least 2 years ago. We don't have a culture plan. I think that's really important, and we need that. So I'm looking for things that are that we haven't had an update from staff on, and I think that would give us the fuller picture of the entire portfolio, from arts and creative industries to the culture plan, and where and how these things fit together with other divisions across the city, because we know that there's impacts in other divisions. I've just noted a couple of them: parks, facilities. I'm sure there's others that I haven't, that I'm not thinking of just on the fly. So I would like to have that information. The sooner the better. Like if that could come back to us in February. I'm not trying to delay this. I'm trying to get the information we need in order to determine what we would need a reserve for. So that's some of the thinking, because like I said, these are reports that we don't have. I certainly haven't had an update on. And I think we need that before we would move forward.
Okay, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. I don't know. I'm a little confused here as well too. We're talking about making a bank account here, is from what I can ascertain, and we're not even talking about how much money we're going to put into it at this point in time. We're just talking about making it, and I fully and completely understand the desire to have these strategic pieces in place, and I think determining the funding level in that bank account and how much is going into it and whether or not we're adjusting percentages, all that stuff, we would want those things before we made those decisions. But actually having a bank account to signal to arts and creative industries that there's going to be a place for you guys to find funding when you need it, I don't know. I'm not sure that I fully understand why we need a complete and full large event strategy or culture plan strategy. Assuredly, those plans are going to come back and say, we need money to implement these things. And so what we're talking about is just having a place that is secure, stable, transparent, equitable for arts and creative industries to look at and say, this is where the funding is going to come from. I've just got a couple of just quick comments, if I may, through you, Chair Freeman, sorry. I know we've talked about this a fair bit today. The property, a lot of folks around the horseshoe here today have said that we've received emails from residents talking about the property taxes being too high. Of course, when we're talking about budget, no one likes to pay property taxes. No one wants to pay taxes. No one wants them to go up. And so when we're talking about property taxes going up, yes, we're going to get emails and pushback from residents about property taxes increasing. And the other 11 months of the year, the only emails we ever get from residents are, we're not doing enough. We need more snow clearing. We need more arts and creative industries. We need more recreation facilities. Why are my parks not maintained in this level like this? Why don't we have enough funding going towards the library, et cetera, et cetera? And these are the priorities that we have to weigh. And during our 3-year budget, we did that. And we may not have fully agreed with absolutely every item, but as a council, I broadly support what we did 3 years ago when we talked, or 2 years ago when we talked about the 3-year budget. We've heard repeatedly from the arts and creative industries folks that we need more funding. There are opportunities that we are potentially losing because arts and creative industries does not know how to get its funding. We know that arts and creative industries could have significant challenges around things like Lumen if they miss the opportunity to bid on a certain art installation. When we talked about creating the Climate Action Reserve Fund, yes, there were other funds that supported climate action in the community, but they needed to fight with the rest of the staff to get that funding. Arts and creative industries deserves its own reserve fund. The last thing I want to highlight here is I'm really fearful about some of the comments on 10B here about pitting staff against each other. I really don't want us to be saying, you know what, arts and creative industries, yes, we would be happy to provide you with a stable and secure funding source for your reserve fund for you, but why don't you check with these 8 people first? And why don't you provide me with these 5 plans first? And then we'll give it to you. Because what that does is it pits the different departments within the city against each other. And so that's something that I really fear around 10B and why I won't support 10B. And at the end of the day, like I say, we're talking about making a bank account. So happy to support the original motion as it is and appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Chair, can I just provide some clarification?
Councillor Rowe is on my list. Do you want to? Okay, yes, you may go ahead.
Okay, I just, I'm not attempting to pit anyone against anyone. This is like I said, the large event strategy is going to require the input from parks, are we putting electricity in Waterloo Park? That's not pitting them against each other. That's getting them to collaborate. Not that they don't collaborate already, right? Like, that's just one example. So that is entirely not the purpose of this. And I guess the other thing, just in terms of funds that creative industry or arts have, I mean, there's already an economic development fund, which creative industries is part of. So I don't know why we would be missing opportunities when we have that fund already that's there to help. I mean, that's the division, that's the funding for that division for them to spend. So I don't understand how this reserve fund would differentiate from the funding that goes to economic development already, and the creative industries team is part of that. So just wanted to ask that question and add that clarification around definitely not pitting people against each other, but actually, you need the collaboration of staff and other divisions to know how some of these things would roll out.
Did you want to ask Brad the question about the Economic Development Reserve? I thought I heard a question in there, so I just trying to.
Through Chair Freeman to the mayor, my laptop battery has taken a break here, so I don't have the policy in front of me. Michael's looking to pull it up, and while we're doing that, I would say we would have to look at the current economic development reserve policy to see if it is sufficiently worded to cover arts and creative industries today, or alternatively, we would be looking at doing what we just did for the Climate Action Reserve Fund, where we would need to make some modifications to eligible expenditures. So the policy as worded today would be initial financial support to attract financial contributions or commitments from other level of government or private sector, implement initiatives planned through council strategic plan, economic development strategy, or other economic development strategies, and provide incentives to retain or attract businesses. So, loosely you could say it fits, or maybe it isn't specifically noted, and therefore we need to adjust the policy.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe?
Okay. I think I appreciate what the mayor is putting out here. I feel that it is too broad, and that we're not going to be able to move forward with councillor rights consideration in any timely way in this council term. I feel that, as I was saying before, my perspective, my comfort level is I'd like to know the policies, I'd like to know the context and the financials, as Councillor Freeman, Chair Freeman explained. So that's my comfort level. That's where I will stay in this. I'm not going to support 10B, and I'm not going to support 10A, just based on my own comfort level. So, but I don't want to I don't know that this is something that we can do, and still, if we have answers, if we have policies that I can look at, that's great, but I don't know that we can achieve that in any timely way if we did want to come back.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just had one. I understand that we're making a bank account. My challenge is if I don't know how I'm gonna put money in the bank account, I don't like making bank accounts just for the sake of making them when I don't know how I'm gonna fund them. And, you know, the comment about pitting departments, I don't see that. Like, there's other reserve funds that fund many things. CURF is a great example. Like, it funds every single one of our departments based on the percentage of the asset management plan. And so I don't see departments fighting with each other for funding. And I feel like there are reserve funds that can achieve this, and we could do that more quickly by modifying the policies in those reserve funds to be more purposefully focused, to say that if opportunity presents itself, for example, the economic development reserve can be used. We made a fair amount of work as a council to reduce the number of reserve funds that we had this year, so that we reduced the management of these funds in all of these different buckets. And so what we did was we looked at the policies of those funds and said, how do we modify those policies to achieve the outcomes that we're looking for? And so I feel like we can do that to achieve this more quickly without a separate fund, for one thing. But more broadly, like, I'm just struggling right now. We're talking about opening a bank account, and everyone's asked us to stop spending money. And so, like, the timing just doesn't work for me right now tonight. Like, I really can't support either of these motions. I'm in Councillor Rowe's seat on this particular one. I'm just being transparent, so you understand where I'm at.
Okay, so I have a question. Then, if 10B doesn't get supported, and I think no matter, I still support 10A because I think it's a value-based decision. It communicates to the community what we want. We could just say, let's not do it when this comes back. But it's an opportunity to put our money where our mouth is, or say we maybe want to think about putting our money where our mouth is by having its own reserve. So I fundamentally disagree with you that it should come from the ECDEV reserve, even if they were to come. So I still think that this 10A is the right way to do it tonight. But I would hate for this discussion to end up in, we don't do 10A or 10B and we do nothing, especially hearing that you two are saying if we flipped the process, we would support it. So I guess my question is, it seems like we still want staff to come back with some information about how to fund arts and creative industries in a full way, and also to signal to the community that we value arts and creative industries. I think I've heard people on council say that that's true for them before, but this is a policy-based, systemic way to show them that. So if 10B fails, and then 10A might fail, is there an alternative motion we can
still give
have?
direction to staff. We can still give direction to staff to say we'd like you to go off and do some work about something. For me, these two pieces are too structured for me. But if we want to say, we've had a very fulsome discussion about the fact that we'd like to make sure that if opportunity presents itself for matching funds for an arts and creative industries related item, that we'd like to know how we can achieve that. And if we have to modify the ECDEV reserve, then we'd like staff to bring that back to council. We can certainly do that. So my suggestion is we take these separate. We'll start with 10B because that's the amendment. And if it falls, we go back to the original motion as written. And then if that were to fall, then we can absolutely give direction to staff.
Okay, an additional clarification, or not a clarification, a point, which is that St. Columba likely derailed staff time big time. We asked them for things and then we reversed our decision. If we ask them to go back to do more work, it's also going to shift what they're supposed to be doing. So I don't know exactly what plans and updates you want, Mayor, I suspect if you were to email staff and set up a meeting, they might be able to provide an update about where they are at in many things. And so what I'm concerned about is that if we're concerned that we haven't seen certain updates, then sending them off to do something else before we send them off to do the thing that we may ultimately want to do may derail some of the things that we're telling them we need to see before you actually get any money. It's like when I talk to my kids, if you do this, then you get this. You know, like staff aren't children, staff are running an organization. And so I don't want this kind of consequence-based leadership from us on council. So I just want to make sure that we set staff up in a way that we are able to deliver and what we're hoping for without derailing their jobs. They have jobs to do. And I'm sure having to do this like yo-yoing can't be easy. So that's another perspective on thinking through what we may end up directing them to do if we don't do these two things.
I understand. Thank you. I think we've had a lot of discussion, and I think it's probably worthwhile to vote and see where this goes, and then we'll go from there. So to be clear, we're voting on item 10B first. It was moved by the mayor, and it was seconded by Councillor Roach. 10B was moved by the mayor and seconded by Councillor Roach. So all those in favor of 10B? Yeah, there's 3. That falls. All those in favor of 10A? Okay, that's 5. Those opposed? 3, so that carries. 10A carries. And now we're gonna move on, if that's okay, to the formal public meeting. Okay. So item 7A is official plan amendment number 63 and zoning bylaw amendment Z2505 for Weber's Properties Incorporated, 200 Weber Street North. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate register in the binder located on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the Kitchener-Waterloo Record on November 28th, 2025, and mailed to, or emailed to on November 26th, 2025 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, to public agencies, to all persons who signed in or spoke at the informal public meeting that was held on April 14th, 2025, as well as to all persons who requested further notice.
The planner, John Voss, will now give a brief overview of the application.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor McCabe, members of council, city staff, and the public. As noted, this is the formal public meeting for 200 Weber Street West for official plan amendment 63 and zone change, application Z2505. The subject property is on the east side of Weber Street North, between University Ave and Marshall Street. This is the former location of White Rose Store, which was demolished in 2024. To the north is the Waterloo Fire Station number 1. To the west are various commercial uses, including retail, restaurants, and automotive uses. To the south is the House of Friendship, and to the east is the village on the Green Townhouse condominium and Laurel Creek. This is a concept plan for a new grocery store with offices on the second floor. Deliveries will occur to the northeast corner of the building, which I'll highlight over here. A noise study will be updated during site plan review to ensure noises from the building, equipment, and operations will be mitigated. The property is close to Laurel Creek, which has a potential to flood during heavy rainstorms. The rear portion of the property, colored green on the screen, is within the floodway, or no development will be permitted. The remainder of the site could be flooded during storms, so the building has been designed to be above the highest forecasted flood depths. Offices are proposed on the second floor along the front portion of the building, as well as the rooftop terrace for amenity. So I'll just highlight those on the screen. Here's where the offices are, and we can see the foundation is raised. On this next image, we can see what those elevations look like. The top image is the front building facade, and the bottom image is the rear facade. As noted, the first story is being raised 5 feet above the ground to mitigate risk of flooding. Stairs and ramps will provide access to the parking lots and to the building entrances, or from the parking lot to the building entrances. The official plan amendment before us is proposing to add a food store as a permitted use while keeping the current corridor commercial designation, and also to designate the floodway portion as open space. An area-specific policy will also be added to secure a flood emergency plan prior to development proceeding. The zoning amendment proposes to add food store as a permitted use, to change the zoning for the floodway lands to conservation or OS3, and to reduce the parking rate from 175 spaces to 105 spaces, 175 to 105. Staff support these amendments. The image on the left shows a portion of the special policy area floodway, which includes the subject lands. The dark gray area is the floodway, where floodwaters will flow through the network and where development is restricted. The light gray area is the part of the floodplain where development can occur if it is flood-proofed. The Provincial Planning Statement 2024 requires any policy changes, such as the official plan amendment that's before us, any policy changes within the special policy area to be approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Ministry of Natural Resources. If City Council endorses OPA 63, then staff will submit a package to the ministries for their approval, including a flood risk assessment, a letter confirming the structural integrity of the building design, and a letter from EMS Services for the proposed development. If the city approves these amendments, then the bylaws will be presented to City Council for their final approval. Based on available information, the proposed development does not appear to comply with the Ontario Building Code. A building permit is unlikely to be issued. Of particular concern is the required exits to an open thoroughfare such as Weber Street during a flood event. Although the building will be flood-proofed, safe egress may be constrained due to the depth and velocity of the floodwater on the site and within the road allowance of Weber Street. OPA 63 and zoning amendment are planning applications. Any approval or acceptance of such applications does not give any assurance whatsoever that building permits will be issued. However, the city is obligated to review the applications regardless of the viability of a building permit. Having considered these ramifications and the proposed applications, staff recommend that that council approve the staff report, that council endorse the official plan amendment 63 and zoning amendment Z 2505, and that council direct staff to submit the special policy area package to the province for their review and approval. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Council, questions for Mr. Voss? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just wondering if you can explain a little bit about the conservation lands change to the rear of the property there that's in the floodway? Mm-hmm. Is that the right terminology?
That is correct.
Okay, got it right. Are there any additional flood mitigation efforts planned for that flood conservation area, like riparian zone or anything that would, help with flood mitigation? How does that conservation zoning work?
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Wright, the conservation zone and this specific area of open space is a protected area where no development, including any site grading, would be permitted. So they really have to keep the land as it is. The idea with the special policy area with those two areas, actually if I go to this image here, the dark gray, the floodway area, that's the area that's identified where flooding is going to occur, and we need to maintain the land to ensure that water can actually flow through and out of the system during a flood event. There's no development or mitigation measures specific to this site that would be considered, but overall the city, with help with the GRCA, is looking at the special policy area overall to see if there's ways to improve the function of the flow, including larger culverts, naturalizing the banks of the culvert of the creek, various different measures. So nothing related to this specific development, but the creek overall is being reviewed to make sure that the special policy area still functions.
Okay, and as a follow-up, I just want to note also that if this project were to move forward, it would be the fourth grocery store directly in a floodway or floodplain, because we have Value Mart uptown. We've got the Walmart and Sobeys locations adjacent to the Laurel Creek. And so it's just one of those things where if you're thinking about community amenities that actually could go completely offline during a major hazard event, I just want to note that for everyone, that it's the fourth one. Thanks.
Other questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you. At this point, I'm just going to move to our registered delegation, and Kristen Bearsdale from GSP Group is a registered delegation. Kristen, you have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Chair Freeman and members of council. I'm going to keep my presentation very brief because John has done a great job providing an overview of the proposed development and where we're at. I just want to also note that there are representatives from Uniweaver Properties here as well, if there are any questions with regards to ownership of the property, et cetera. Quickly, I'm just going to touch on, John gave you a great overall context of the site. The air photo that you see on the screen right now does in fact show the previous White Rose building on the site. For those of you who are familiar with the area and familiar with the property has sat empty for decades. Unfortunately, the building became into such a state of disrepair a couple of years ago, and then coupled with some of the problems they were having with regards to trespassing on site, as well as other safety risks, Uniweavers decided to remove the property or demolish the property. The footprint of the proposed development that you see in front of you this evening, or the proposed grocery store, generally reflects that former footprint. If there had been an opportunity to retain the footprint, which would have actually saved us a lot of headaches in terms of special policy area revisions and Ontario Building Code permissions, we would have, but unfortunately the building was in just such a state of disrepair that it could no longer be kept on site. Mr. Voss touched on the proposed development. I'm not going to spend too much time going over that. We are proposing to include a food store as part of the list of corridor commercial uses. I did want to take an opportunity to thank staff and commend staff with regards to their processing of the application. The fact that this is in a special policy area has included a very unique additional policy and review process as part of this process. The applicant and the consultant team has been in constant contact with city staff, Grand River Conservation Authority staff, as well as both the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing because of the special policy considerations and the flood risk assessment that Mr. Voss touched on. The flood risk assessment is kind of in a draft form. It's gone back and forth with both the city as well as the ministry. It's kind of an evolution document that we continue to get feedback from. We're quite confident that given council's decision this evening that we're getting the flood risk assessment to a package that hopefully will be reviewed and approved by the ministry. And we also wanted to acknowledge staff's approach to this. I realize it's a rather unique process that you have in front of you, being requested to endorse the application rather than approve it this evening. We know that that's reflective of the existing circumstances with regards to the special policy area. However, it does provide some assurances to the owners with regards to potential purchase and agreements of purchase and sale they have on the property. So that's it from me. Again, Mr. Voss touched on the details of the application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions, council? I just had one. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Councillor Hainmer, my apologies.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Kristen, for your update. And this may be a question that goes to both John and yourself. In John's report, he indicated that building permits would not be issued based on the current design. So what's the plan at this stage, to become compliant that you could be pulling a building permit?
Through you, Chair Freeman, so we have been aware of that issue. That's one of the reasons why I touched on some of the complexities and struggles we had with regards to removing the building. We continue to have discussions with city staff with regards to this building permit issue. Through our discussions with staff, and perhaps Mr. Voss can touch on this, I think city staff are very well aware of the circumstance of this property, but not just this property. The same implications with regards to building permits for any property within the special policy area. The the owner and the purchaser are both aware of this requirement, and we continue to hopefully, perhaps optimistically work with staff to figure out some kind of resolution on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, council? So I had two. They're both kind of site plan related, but they're also related to the proximity of houses to the rear of the property. So I know that lighting from rear lighting from buildings such as this can create a lot of challenges for individuals living in and around the building. And refrigerator trucks are incredibly noisy. It is not uncommon to enclose them. And you've placed the refrigerator trucks at the rear of the building closest to the residential uses. So I just had questions around those two items.
Thank you. So in support of the application, there was a noise study that was done. In addition to that noise study, there was some back and forth with the city and the region with regards to clarification regarding those specific matters. The proposed development is required to include a noise wall along the rear of the property to address some of the noise issues. And I believe the report also recommended that there would be operational hours with regards to refrigeration units to further curtail any impacts of noise outside of typical daytime hours or during sensitive hours. With regards to the potentials of lighting impact, again, we've proposed to put a noise wall that also acts as a privacy fence along the rear of the property. And through the site plan process, we would be required to demonstrate to the city that we are complying with regards to their light standards in terms of light pollution off-site.
And I guess just the other last noise piece on this site plan, I'm not quite sure where your snow storage is, but again, there's noise and also access to a direct floodway with potentially materials containing calcium chloride.
Excellent comment, and I suspect that's probably, as the region still being in charge of water source protection, will be something that they will be particularly interested in as part of the site plan application process.
Okay, that was all of my questions. Seeing no other questions, is there anyone present tonight who wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none. If there's no more delegations, this formal public meeting is concluded and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. Thanks. I think you need to read okay.
Okay, so I'll move a motion to approve the application, whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff. Therefore be it resolved that council approves staff report IPPW 2025-067. 2, that council endorse official plan amendment 63, OPA 63, Uniweber Properties, Inc., 200 Weber Street North, in accordance with section 7 of staff report IPPW 2025-067. 3, that council directs staff to submit the special policy area submission package to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and that the Ministry of Natural Resources, in accordance with section 7 of staff report IPPW 2025-067. 4, that council endorse zoning bylaw amendment Z2505, Uniweber Properties, Inc., 200 Weber Street North, in accordance with section 7 of staff report IPPW 2025-067.
Thank you. Seconded, Mayor McCabe. Any further comments? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment, just to say that, I'm going to support this, no problem at all. I just think it's really great that this site is finally being redeveloped. People who have longer memories than me or have lived here longer than me probably remember that area very fondly as White Rose, but it's definitely time to move on. So this will be really a really welcome addition to that area. So thank you very much for doing that.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried unanimously. We are on to item 8, consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There is none. Notice of motion, none. Communication and correspondence, there's none. Any unfinished business, none. Questions, council? Seeing none. New business, council? Mayor McCabe?
I just want to remind ourselves that, I think it was December 11th, actually technically was our council meeting last year, but that's when we made what I think is a very momentous decision to go with Build Now Waterloo Region to develop the 2025 University Avenue East project. There's been a lot of work. It took a lot of work and some risk and some real leadership by council and staff to go in this direction. But, you know, there's been a lot of work that's happened with Build Waterloo Region, which is, again, comprised of people from the trades, the Grand Valley Construction Association, private sector housing developers, and nonprofit housing developers. And it's a really exciting project, and it's a year old today when we made the official decision, and we look forward to groundbreaking in 2026. So just wanted to remind us of a happy anniversary to us.
Thank you. Any other new business, council? Councillor Bodley.
I just wanted to give a shout out to our neighborhoods team and to the Laurelwood Neighborhood Association. This past Saturday, they hosted a tree lighting event at Waterloo Fire Station 2, and I know that a lot of those community events are it's wonderful to see so many folks in the community out and connecting, and especially at a municipal facility like the fire station. And I just want to give some kudos to staff, not just in the neighborhoods team, which I always give them kudos to, but in this particular instance, fire staff for making sure that the fire station was available to be used by the community. There were a number of firefighters that were around talking to community members. In fact, we also had some folks from the Conestoga College Pre-Service Firefighter Education and Training course out there talking about fire safety with kids during this event. And it was also really exciting when there was a fire call during the event and a truck had to leave from the station. I think the kids were a little excited. Hope everybody is okay in that call, but it was exciting for the kids to see the truck with the lights on flying through. And I just want to thank everybody on staff for alongside all the volunteers in the Neighborhoods Association for putting together a really wonderful event.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I'm just going to build on Councillor Bodley's plug for events past, and I'm going to add some future ones. So we had our tree lighting in Uptown on Friday evening, and so thanks to the BIA for your leadership on that, and really loved the sheep. The caroling sheep were a major hit, and the tree looks fantastic. I don't know if we ever had information about who provided the tree this year, but do we? Okay, thank you to the Gottliebs for providing that tree. It's magnificent. I also just want to note that this Sunday, December 14th, is the Hanukkah menorah lighting in the town square, 5:30, so hope to see some folks out to that. And then also, this year, there's many different markets around town celebrating the holidays, but there's a holiday Indigenous art market that's at 22 Willow Street. I think that's the Lutheran Church on Willow. And so it ran for the first time on December 7th. It's returning again on December 14th from 2 to 6. And so that's definitely one that is on my list. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other new business? Seeing none, we're on to enactment of bylaws. Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? That's carried. I need a mover to adjourn. Moved by Mayor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Vasic. All those in favor? That is carried. And I will not see you, my friends, before the holidays because I leave the country on Saturday. And so I wish you all a very happy holiday in whatever way that you celebrate.